Welcome to Manhwa Peak.
This story starts by revealing that in just 10 years, the Eastern Federation kingdom is going to fall apart because of the five big sins, ending in total wipeout with nothing left. To stop this disaster, our main guy steps up as their guardian, but he never expected it to turn into such a massive headache. At first, he was just a normal dude grinding 78-hour weeks in the modern world. But somehow he wakes up inside a noble in a fantasy land. Sounds awesome, right? But he soon finds out he's totally illiterate and has zero special powers. He thinks he should at least know the language, which shocks the butler when he catches him holding a book upside down. At dinner, the maids bring out a huge spread and he chows down, loving his new life. They even help him bathe, and he can't help thinking that being the young master of a count's family is the best. He gets spoiled rotten and does nothing, feeling like he's in heaven. But here's the problem. He has no idea where he is. Normally, when someone jumps into a character in a fantasy world, it's from a book or game they've played. One of the maids says his brothers, young Master Leo and Tanyo, are coming back tomorrow, so he should rest up. Our MC is confused by this, and the maid is a little shocked that he doesn't even remember his own family. As he starts putting the pieces together, those names ring a bell. All of a sudden, it hits him. He's in the world of Psychedelia. Psychedelia is a turn-based RPG that our MC used to play whenever he had a free minute. But here's the kicker. No matter what path you choose in the game, the moment the five great sins, wrath, greed, sloth, pride, and obsession show up, you're basically fucked. The kingdom's nobility and the entire city, basically everything, starts to spiral into chaos. And the Palladio house where our MC finds himself is a notorious noble family that plays a part in the subquest before the main story kicks off. The eldest son, Leo Palladio, is essentially the king of prostitutes, while the second son, Tanyo, is the king of drugs. He drops to his knees as it dawns on him just how well he knows this place. It was the first subquest in the game. Looking around, he sees that the main house looks exactly like it did in the game. The Pallazios are the first to be devastated by the five great sins, and he's the extra villain, the third son of the Palladio household, Alan Palladio. I love how expressionless his face is. He just found out he's going to die soon, and all he can think about is how much experience points he got from that subquest. As he lies down in bed, he's terrified to even sleep. He thinks about how he'd rather go back to being a wage slave working 78 hours a week, because this new luxurious life of his is set to end in exactly 10 years. To him, that's worse than 6 months of unpaid wages. He can't believe he's stuck in a fantasy world as a character with no powers. Pretty much the opposite of what most people get when they're reincarnated. But then an idea strikes him. Since he knows what's going to happen in the future, he could be like a prophet of sorts. He could prevent the world's downfall by reforming the five great sins, all for the sake of his peaceful, noble life. It shouldn't be impossible considering the five great sins are just kids right now, but with no powers of his own. How on earth is he going to pull this off? 2 months later, our main character had successfully rescued some orphans from the human testing center. When I say our MC managed to, I really mean his knight. Evan was the one who did the rescuing. Evan reports that he's left the management of the orphanage in the hands of a girl named Utea. Our MC nods in agreement, realizing he made the right choice in picking Evan for this job, as he's quite skilled at handling such tasks. However, since our MC struggles to show emotions on his face like a typical person, Evan is left puzzled, wondering if what he just heard was a compliment, as he can't quite read his expression. To clarify, our MC tries to force a smile, and Evan thinks he'll never get used to his young master's face. He recalls how Alan used to wear his emotions on his sleeve, whether he was gloomy or happy. But now, it just feels strange. Even our MC suspects that his possession of Alan's body might have only affected his face, as he can't seem to smile properly. Moving on, Evan decides to accept his young master's praise, and our MC explains that Evan is a rare gem in the world of Psychedelia, because he has remained honest and loyal despite all the betrayals around him. That's why he hired him as soon as he found him. Back to the report, Evan mentions that the reason our MC sent him to rescue the children from the testing center was to save Utea, which our MC confirms. Evan adds that he can see why. Even with his experience as a mercenary, he can tell Utea is no ordinary child. She's strong enough that he can't understand why she just accepted being locked up. Evan questions why our MC didn't bring her to the estate, as keeping her at the orphanage doesn't seem beneficial. Our MC agrees, but internally he thinks that it might look like he's neglecting her instead of utilizing her potential. However, leaving her at the orphanage is part of his plan. Utea is a non-human who makes a pact with an otherworldly being to gain its powers. ultimately becoming the embodiment of the wrath of the five great sins, and causing the deaths of countless people. However, thanks to our hero, that grim future is averted, and he wants her to grow up in peace. He believes he has finally dealt with one of the 4 remaining landmine disasters. But since he can't share this with Evan, he decides to come up with an excuse. Acting all mysterious, he tells Evan that the time isn't right yet. Evan, curious as always, wonders what he means. But as is often the case, side characters have their own narratives. He assures our hero that he understands. Our main character urges him to keep this under wraps, and to support the orphanage with enough funds for them to live peacefully. He also hands Evan a handwritten letter, asking him to pass it to Utea. When Evan inquires about the letter's importance, our hero brushes it off, saying it's just a way to check in on her. He explains that he wants to reassure her since she's been through so much. Evan promises to deliver the letter and quickly sets off on his horse. Meanwhile, our main character reflects on whether the letter will truly comfort her, but he figures it's worth a shot. The real intention behind the letter is to include some quotes he's heard repeatedly in the game. During a pivotal moment when Utea was wreaking havoc on the kingdom, the Archbishop mentioned a specific line about how a certain spell could help befriend a non-human like Utea, who had already succumbed to the sin of wrath. The line was something like casting a spell of agony from the dark, with the brightness of belonging to the fall. Honestly, he doesn't quite grasp what it means, but it seemed to resonate with Utea for a brief moment. As the story unfolds, Utea ends up killing the Archbishop. It's not that the spell didn't work, it was just too late, and her attempts to calm down failed, resulting in the destruction of the entire kingdom. Now, our main character believes it should work this time, since it's not too late. He figures that since he's dealt with wrath, it's time to move on to his next target. Yet, he still finds it absurd to think about becoming friends with a monster just because of a quote. But who knows? Maybe it'll actually work. Especially since the Sins seem to worship some mysterious god or otherworldly being. He struggles to understand what those kids are thinking. They come off as fanatics. Meanwhile, we finally see Utea reading the letter our MC sent her, and she's not exactly thrilled. Just looking at her, Evan can't help but notice the sheer amount of mana radiating from her. It's unbelievable. According to Evan, this little girl is the strangest person he's ever met. It's as if she has no emotions at all. She asks Evan to confirm if our MC was the one who sent the letter, and he nods. In an instant, Utea unleashes her mana like a crazed yander who just caught her partner cheating. She's upset that our MC didn't invite her to the estate, and Evan is about to feel the full force of her rage. Manifesting mana in solid form like Utea is doing now is something only those who have reached the Master Realm can achieve. Evan recalls our MC saying it wasn't the right time for him to meet with her yet, and surprisingly, that excuse seems to work. Utea calms down, interpreting the quote our boy included in the letter as a promise only her master would understand. Meanwhile, Evan is left bewildered, wondering what on earth is happening in front of him. Utea, fully in her yander mode, insists that she understands what our boy meant. This girl, who honestly resembles Sheltir Bloodfallen from Overlord, embodies the sin of wrath as the daughter of monsters, the bloody queen Utea. Meanwhile, back to our main character. He thinks he's managed to stretch his luxurious lifespan a bit. And honestly, he's not wrong. As he drifts off to sleep, he even imagines the bright moon in the sky cheering him on. He promises himself to work hard on rescuing the next child. We get this adorable little bonus panel of him placing a primrose flower on his bed before he dozes off. He thinks all he really wants is to live a long, peaceful, luxurious life. Is that too much to ask? In the Asteria Kingdom, there's a tradition of placing primrose flowers on wounds, or old scars for the deceased during funerals, which basically means our boy is in deep trouble. The next day, our MC finds himself in the library, where books are literally falling on his head, as if they're trying to kick his illiterate ass out. He's currently on the hunt for clues about the third sin. Let's call them landmines. But the whole process is giving him a headache. Evan reports that they've successfully rescued the second child, all thanks to our boy's intel on where to find her. Our MC asks if Evan made sure they treated the child extra kindly, to which Evan confirms, explaining that after saving her from the illegal slave market, they were very gentle with her. But before he can finish, someone kicks the library door open, sending them both flying. This brute turns out to be Tonio, the second son of the County Paleo. He starts bullying our MC, asking how an illiterate guy like him is even holding a book. I love our MC's bratty eyes. He's completely unfazed. As Tonio ramps up the pressure demanding answers, our MC thinks this guy is such a nuisance. He even wonders how the original Alan would handle this kind of treatment. Realistically, he would love to fight back, but that just seems like too much hassle. So he decides to play it low-key. He tells Tonio that since it looks like he wants to use the library, he'll be taking his leave. Thinking he's completely dominated our MC, Tonio steps on his head with a mocking grin. But just then, a sharp knife whizzes by, embedding itself in the wall, as another brute enters, telling both Tonio and our MC that they're being too loud. This new arrival is Leo Palladio, the first son of the county. As these two idiots start squabbling, our MC seizes the opportunity to crawl away. He reflects that in the game, the Palladio county had quickly vanished after the first subquest, but he didn't realize their power and influence were much greater than he thought. Basically, what's really happening here is that these scummy brothers are fighting over who will become the family head. The first son is a major player in the underworld, known as the Prostitute King, while the second son runs a large-scale drug cartel, earning him the title of the Drug King. As these two buffoons bicker, our MC realizes he can't afford to get involved with either of them if he wants to maintain his sweet, luxurious life. I absolutely adore this MC. He literally crawled away while his two brothers were at each other's throats, and Evan just followed him like it was the most normal thing in the world. As Evan fixes his hair for him, our MC vows to live a happy life as a weak and incompetent bastard child. A little while later, Evan shares that the second child they rescued didn't seem quite like a typical kid either. As he gazes at the lazy master in front of him, Evan can't help but wonder how someone like this could possibly learn about the illegal slave market and the secret bio-experiments happening all over the kingdom. It's making Evan question his entire reality. Looking at this foolish master, he thinks about how hard it must be for him to keep it together around his brothers, while our main character just grumbles about being tired. Moving on, Evan wonders why he sent the second child to the orphanage again. Our MC, however, knows that this second child is anything but ordinary. In fact, he's on a whole different level. Within the United Kingdom, which is made up of several nations, the central one is the Kalian Kingdom, where the second child they saved from the illegal slave market hails from. This child, or more accurately, the second boss of psychedelia, is known as Deus Macaulian. After being sold into slavery and mistreated, he ended up embodying one of the 5 sins, the sin of sloth. He then went on to wreak havoc on the kingdom in the most horrific ways imaginable. This part of the story left many players shocked by psychedelia's cruelty. Despite his title as the sin of sloth, he was actually known for being incredibly hardworking, always repaying debts and wrongs multiple times over. That's why our MC stressed to Evan the importance of treating Deus with utmost kindness. The graphics of Deus's fights were so intense that our MC still trembles just thinking about them. Trying to keep an air of mystery, he answers Evan's question by saying that he sent the second child to the orphanage because the time isn't right yet. Evan just nods along, saying he expected as much. He then asks if the letter he sent to Utea this time was about the second child, to which our MC confirms. But in reality, we get a glimpse at what's really in that letter. He's just venting to Utea about how his older brothers are picking on him. Honestly, this guy cracks me up. I really love this MC. Anyway, he claims in the letter that he told Utea to look after the second child, who's feeling a bit under the weather. And he's not wrong. Deus could definitely use some time to chill and heal. Meanwhile, at the orphanage, Deus is trying to keep to himself, hiding his body covered in cuts. Utea approaches him and asks if he's broken. She wonders if the Black Goat organization is responsible for his injuries, and just hearing that name gets a reaction out of Deus. In her Yandra mode, Utea starts talking about how even though he's broken, he's still been chosen. She congratulates him for being selected by the Blue Moon, which is what they call our MC. It seems like Utea is setting up an organization with our MC at the helm, and she promises Deus that if he stays loyal and follows their orders, he'll get his chance for revenge. Hearing this, something stirs within Deus, and his own magic, or maybe the authority of sloth, like in ReZero, starts to manifest. With that settled, Utea decides to write her first reply to our letter, and for some reason, she's way too excited about it. Meanwhile, back at the estate, our main character was still deep in the library, searching for clues about how to track down the third child. Just then, Evan burst through the announcing that they were in big trouble. He reported that the second young master of the Palladio household was dead. Our MC, who had been expecting this news, was still taken aback by how quickly it all unfolded. The funeral was held almost immediately, but what really shocked everyone was the complete lack of mourning. Even their father showed up with 2 prostitutes by his side. Like, seriously? Our MC was a bit stunned. Bringing drugs and women to your own son's funeral is crossing a major line. He always knew this family was messed up, but this was next level. He mused that psychedelia really is a dark fantasy genre indeed. Anyway, moving on. Our MC thought that Tonio's accidental fall seemed a bit off compared to what he remembered. In the game, Leo had cried desperately after killing his brother, shouting about how he was now the sole heir of the Count Palladio. But now, here was Leo, literally smirking in front of the body. Like, come on, at least try to hide your emotions a little. Regardless, this wasn't really our MC's problem. His main focus was still on resolving the issue with the 5 deadly sins. Fast forward a year, and the successor problem was sorted out, with Leo taking over Tonio's drug business. The county became a lot more peaceful. In the meantime, Utea and our MC had become pen pals, exchanging letters more frequently. Our MC figured that keeping in touch with her would be beneficial down the line, while Utea filled him in on how the other kids were doing, which made him smirk since they were growing up nicely. She also sent over their monthly sponsorship list, which caught our MC's attention because it seemed to be growing quite a bit. He wondered what was going on, but Evan, who was busy stuffing his face, pointed out that while it was unusual, it was a good thing nonetheless. Evan then finally shared the news that our boy had been searching for. The information they needed had been found. They even got a call from the Information Guild about it, which was a huge relief for our main character, since it was all about the ancient book concerning the 3rd child. This meant he could finally uncover that little landmine, and it brought him so much joy. Everything seemed to be going perfectly, and our MC was enjoying a peaceful evening. Meanwhile, on the other side of the land, at a drug distribution site called Margot, some of Leo's henchmen were boasting about how generous the eldest member of the Palladio family was, always showering them with big rewards. Thanks to that, their drug organization had grown to a few hundred members. But little did they know, that number was about to take a nosedive. What they witnessed next was pure horror. Most of their members were literally turning on themselves, screaming that they couldn't control their bodies. It was as if they were being puppeteered, leading them to take their own lives. The culprits behind this chaos were none other than our MC's children, Utea and Deus. Using his thread magic, Deus wiped them out single-handedly. Turning to Utea, he asked if there was really any point in killing these fools. Utea, however, questioned whether Deus felt any pity for them. He clarified that he didn't, especially since these guys exploited human lives to produce drugs. He felt this had nothing to do with his quest for revenge. But Utea, unleashing her magic, explained that this was essential for their master's return. They were essentially clearing out the trash in the county, so that when our MC stepped up as the heir, things would be easier for him. With a majestic smile, she wondered how they could let the place look so shabby for his arrival. Deus responded that he understood, but honestly, what did he really understand? They were treating our MC like Ainz from Overlord and Sid from Eminence in Shadow. Using her magic, Utea etched a symbol into the ground, and as they soared away in style, she declared that everything would unfold according to his will. A massive surge of mana erupted, leaving a crescent moon shape behind, and Utea added that they were the blue moon, destined to become his sword. Now that's some serious Eminence in Shadow vibes. It's been 2 years since our main character and Utea became pen pals, and during that time, Evan has been working tirelessly to track down the other sins. Looking completely worn out, he finally collapses on the grass, where our boy's magic seems to revive him. Evan shares the good news that they've successfully found the 5th child and sent them to the orphanage, which really hits our MC in the feels. Even though he can't show it on his face, he explains that over the past 2 years, he's managed to save all 3 remaining children, meaning he's rescued all 5 sins. To celebrate Evan's hard work, he treats him to some delicious cake and goodies, while also mentioning that finding the sin of greed, the 3rd child, was a bit of a challenge. After making Evan put in some extra hours using his game knowledge, everything worked out in the end. He praises Evan for a job well done, and now that the mission is complete, he can finally take a breather. Evan asks if this means all the orphanage duties are wrapped up, and our MC confirms it. Evan breathes a sigh of relief, but then questions why our MC doesn't seem happier about their achievement. Our boy insists he's thrilled, but Evan points out that he doesn't look it at all. Our MC tries to defend himself, saying he's smiling right now, and we even get a close-up of his mouth, only to realize this guy isn't smiling at all. You wouldn't even call it a smirk. But Evan, used to this, just rolls with it. As they move on, our MC reflects on how he didn't expect things to go so smoothly. After all, the bosses of psychedelia became the 5 great sins due to their terrible pasts. Even though they're in the past before becoming the sins, The odds of saving them all before they went through those awful experiences were pretty slim. He was also worried he'd be too late, and they'd be too broken to save. He asks Evan how things are going at the orphanage, and Evan hands him a letter, saying everything is running smoothly as usual. The kids, who once seemed like broken dolls, have really brightened up. Our main character points out that if that's true, they wouldn't need to hire a separate caretaker. That said, he didn't expect Utea to do such a great job with the orphanage. He wonders if her background has something to do with it. In the game, she was meant to feel a sentimental connection to the place. This leads him to remark on how nice Utea is in her own way, but Evan quickly urges him to read the letter for any important updates. In the letter, Utea gives our boy a rundown of how they are doing, mentioning that they're growing well and he doesn't need to worry about them, especially Deus, who was a bit of a special case. She reassures him that all the children are improving, which brings a rare warm smile to our main character's face. He expresses that he's just happy they're all growing up well. Deep down, he wonders if the environment is the key factor in an orphanage, since these kids are thriving. Anyway, Evan asks the big question: when does he plan to meet these kids? He always says the time will come, but our main character privately admits he has no intention of meeting them anytime soon. He thinks it would be nice to be close to them, but the kids don't exactly have personalities. He's eager to be around, and honestly, he's not wrong. Having witnessed their cruelty in the game, we can't blame him. Maybe it's because of how brutal their transformation into sins was. Regardless, he thinks it shouldn't be too bad now that he managed to rescue them before those events unfolded. Yet he still feels a twinge of fear just thinking about it, so he tells Evan that he's thinking about meeting the kids in maybe 5 years. Regardless, our main character realizes that what he really needs right now is the ability to protect himself in this grim, dark fantasy world. And the answer lies in magic. As he practices, he feels lucky that the body he's in has some magical talent. Then Evan asks if he's heard of an organization called the Blue Moon. Our MC admits he hasn't, and Evan explains that Blue Moon is a group that's recently started hunting down criminal organizations. Our MC thinks that if they're cleaning up the trash, that's a good thing, but deep down he wonders why he's never heard of them in the game. He's sure they won't last long. But Evan teasingly points out that our MC should be really scared, since Blue Moon's whole thing is taking out nobles, which sends a chill down his spine. I love the chibi panels of our MC, as he tells Evan that just in case he should sleep next to his room from now on. Meanwhile, back at the orphanage, Utea is holding the Blue Moon weekly report meeting. The Sin of Pride, Solrung reports that she took care of all the slave traders by chopping off their heads. She does some acrobatics in the air, while saying that those idiots couldn't even figure out who she really was. She even claims she gave them a chance, saying she'd let them live if they could guess the color of her eyes. But those weaklings couldn't even get that right. Then we meet the Sin of Greed, Rinna, who, despite her name, is more calm and elegant. She reports that all the corpses were melted down, leaving no evidence behind. The Sin of Misophobia, Radon, reports that he also wrapped things up in the south, taking care of the illegal human testing grounds and turning those Avalon bastards who were causing trouble into minced meat. These kids are seriously scary, I tell you. Anyway, the scariest of them all, Utea, praises them for a job well done, talking about how everything will go according to his will. She emphasizes that they all exist for the sake of the Great Moon. This secret organization worships the Great Moon, the Blue Moon, who just so happens to be our main character. Suddenly, Deus reports a problem, which makes Utea question what could possibly be wrong. When everything seems perfect under his command, these fools are treating our MC like some kind of deity. Deus explains that the head of Avalon is the eldest son of the Palladio Count family, where their lord resides. He claims to have found a dangerous written order while cleaning up the south. It turns out that the eldest son, Leo, is targeting our MC. Naturally, Utea can't let this slide. She unleashes an intense, murderous aura that sends the other kids cowering in fear. The letter reveals that Leo's plan is to slowly poison our boy, after eliminating their father, which sends Utea into a furious rage. Fast forward 2 years, our MC's father, Count Palladio, has passed away. And just like before, his funeral is held almost immediately. Our MC explains that while the official cause of death is heart failure, it's clear he died from an overdose. Meanwhile, at the funeral, Leo gets news that the Blue Moon has struck one of his facilities. Seriously, couldn't they have waited until after the funeral? Leo keeps asking if everyone was wiped out again. Our main character, who's just casually eavesdropping, realizes that his brother is becoming increasingly cautious about the Blue Moon. As the Count's funeral wraps up without a single tear shed, our MC decides he doesn't want to get tangled up in all this drama and quietly slips away, just as his brother shoots him a planning glare. When Evan asks what our MC plans to do next since it looks like that jerk of a brother is on track to become the new count, our MC is already one step ahead. He's been packing his bags and tells Evan to do the same. The plan? To run away from this mess. Evan questions whether he really intends to flee, and our MC clarifies that it's not a complete getaway. They're just heading downtown to lay low for a bit. When Evan asks if he means the town of Rodnell, our guy confirms it. He's been eyeing Rodnell for a while now, and it's a small town in the south of Palladio, making it the perfect hideout. Plus, he's timed it well since Leo has been getting him some seriously unsettling looks. Once they arrive in Rodnell, our MC actually starts enjoying life, whipping up some delicious-looking toast while Evan just goes along with everything, like it's most normal thing ever. But 3 days later, their peaceful existence is shattered when our MC is forced to return home for his brother's funeral. He can't believe he's back so soon. According to the game, Leo wasn't supposed to die yet. The cause of the death is a stab through the heart, which leaves our MC wondering who could have done such a thing. He tries to ask one of the servants about the details, but they scream in horror as if they're about to meet their end. It's not just that. All the servants are acting strangely, overly apologetic, and treating him like he's some kind of mafia boss. He can't help but wonder what's going on with these people. As he's making his way out, Evan catches up to him, and he asks him if he found out why the servants are acting so weird. Evan claims he did, and playfully wonders if our NC was the one who made the Avalon drug organization disappear overnight. Turns out Leo was the head of that organization, and now that he's gone, it seems like the whole thing vanished without a trace. We then flash back to the day our main character set off for Rodmill. Inside the carriage, Evan was curious, asking why he's heading to a small town like Rodnell instead of a bustling city. Our MC explains that a city is simply not an option for him. Rodnell is his ultimate destination, the endgame in all his plans. He shares that his mission is straightforward: save the 5 great sins from their misfortunes, to prevent the world from crumbling. Plus, since Rodnell isn't part of the original story and has a villa, it's the ideal spot for him. A villa is a separate estate, making it the perfect hideaway for a laid-back noble like him, where he can relax and do absolutely nothing. Our MC gets serious when answering Evan's question, insisting that everything he does has a purpose. But after hearing the same old responses for a while, Evan calls him out, pointing out that he always uses those same lines when he wants to dodge a question. He tells our MC that he can't fool him anymore. Our MC is taken aback by how Evan has seen through his little lies. As their banter continues, Leo, who's been watching our MC drive away, contemplates whether he should kill him or not. According to Leo, it doesn't really matter if our MC lives or dies. He had already planned to poison him. But now that our MC has decided to leave for the border, Leo feels he has no reason to go through with it. Yet for some inexplicable reason, he still feels the urge to eliminate him. He instructs one of his henchmen, Allman, to follow the carriage. Allman, however, asks if that means he's supposed to kill the MC. This question leaves Leo baffled. Allman has never questioned him before, no matter what orders he received. He usually just follows them without a word, so for him to speak up like this feels a bit odd. Leo reminds Allman that his job is to obey him, but before he can finish, Allman lunges at him, stabbing him right through the heart. Leo, in shock, shouts out why Allman would betray him like this. But Allman simply replies that he enjoys playing war. We soon discover that Allman is actually part of the Blue Moon organization, and his real name is hidden. He explains that they've been taught a creed by Blue Moon. Since the Blue Moon is essentially RMC's sword, it makes sense for them to act according to his wishes. However, if anyone dares to threaten the Great Blue Moon, RMC, they're allowed to take matters into their own hands, meaning they can eliminate the threat. Hidden reveals he's been waiting for Leo to give the order to kill their lord, and he can't believe it took 2 years for that to happen. Leo tries to argue that his subordinates won't let Hidden live, but Hidden counters that, with Leo's death, the entire organization will be wiped off the continent forever. Looking at Leo's lifeless body, Hidden can't help but comment on how unfortunate this all is. If Leo hadn't tried to kill their great master, he might have lived a few more months or even years. Meanwhile, in the present, RMC is enjoying his dream life in the small town of Rodmill. He wakes up whenever he wants and shares delicious meals with Evan, living the life of a true noble. But as fate would have it, his peaceful existence is shattered when he receives a letter. The letter requested that he step up as the next head of the family. Just like that, his carefree life came to an end, a mere 4 days after it began, forcing him to return to the palatial state. However, things felt off. The maids and other staff were acting strangely around him. He couldn't help but wonder what was behind their odd behavior. Then Evan teasingly asked him when he had become the shadow leader. leaving him completely baffled. It dawned on him that all this fuss was due to the bizarre circumstances surrounding his brother's death, which had led to his current predicament. In his usual dramatic fashion, he started sobbing, pleading with Evan to help him understand why he was seen as the villain in this story. Evan pointed out that since he stood to gain the most from the situation, it was only natural for people to suspect he had a hand in his brother's murder. Right after he left the estate, Leo was killed, and our main character had the perfect alibi to step into the role of the next count. Realizing how his plan to avoid this mess had backfired, he felt a wave of frustration, but Evan tried to lift his spirits, explaining that with the drug organization, Avalon out of the picture, and his brother gone, he wouldn't have to worry about anything anymore. Evan jokingly added that in short, our main character was now the new shadow leader of the county, who had supposedly orchestrated the assassination of a swordmaster. Despite Leo's scummy reputation, he was still regarded as a swordmaster. Our main character began to ponder where to even begin, as he couldn't think of any organization capable of taking out a key figure in the underworld so swiftly. He asked Evan about the group he had heard hunted other organizations, to which Evan wondered if he meant the Blue Moon. Our main character speculated whether the Blue Moon could be behind his brother's death and the downfall of Avalon. However, Evan quickly clears things up, saying that according to the Information Guild, the Blue Moon isn't to blame. Instead of leaving behind bodies, the Blue Moon is known for marking the moon itself. That's just how it operates. But it's rumored that all the members of Avalon met their end with a sword through the heart. Evan can't help but tease our MC, joking that the road to hell has been opened. But putting jokes aside, our MC reflects on his gained knowledge, realizing there shouldn't be any organization called the Blue Moon, which means they can't be responsible for this mess. But if it's not them, then who could it be? As he tries to piece everything together, the scene shifts to the orphanage where Utea is holding a meeting with the other great sins. She asks if everything went smoothly, and Rinna, the sin of greed, confirms that she left no traces behind. Sailwrong, the sin of pride, adds that there was no one left alive on her end, just corpses. Deus chimes in, boasting that he took out all 486 soldiers of Avalon. His magic is quite something, like a beautiful butterfly tangled in spider webs. Then there's Radon, the sin of misophobia, who also confirms that he cut down all the bad guys in half. Utea praises them for their work, but she's a pretty intimidating child. There are whispers that she's actually over 1,000 years old in the novel, but who really knows? That's how Avalon, the most notorious drug organization in the world that brought doom to the Asteria Kingdom, was wiped out in just 5 days. But suddenly, Radon mentions that he doesn't think the cleanup was flawless. When Utea asks what he means, Radon explains that he stumbled upon some intriguing documents linked to the nobles associated with Avalon, particularly the Altea Doctum, which has some deep ties. Hearing this, Utea's magic starts to flare up, and she tells the others they already know what she's about to say. It's time to wipe them out. Radon promises to handle it quietly. Moving on, Utea then asks if the Information Guild is clean, and whether they have any ties to Avalon. Rinna confirms this, explaining that the guild matter is being dealt with separately from the other issue concerning the Blue Moon. Deji Ants, on the other hand, claims that all the guilds behave similarly, referring to it as the Hell Sword crafted by the Swordmaster. Hearing this, Rinna inquires if she should keep tabs on our MC's movements, to which Utea agrees, emphasizing that this entire situation must not reach that person's ears. She insists she has mentioned this multiple times, and they should all be aware of it. When she refers to that person, she essentially means our MC. Dagius points out that since that person's family targeted them first, the order to eliminate them wasn't sanctioned by them. Upon hearing this, Utea starts to panic. In her opinion, all their actions must be driven by a direct order from our MC. She claims they are essentially swords, and a sword should never think for itself. She declares to the other Sims that from this moment on, all members of the Blue Moon must only act on orders, and they should take this decree seriously. This leaves the other Sims feeling a bit uneasy, as Utea adds that they must never disappoint that person, no matter what. Inwardly, Dagius thinks he can't quite grasp any of this. For someone as powerful as Utea to feel anxiety and restlessness simply because she's discovered by that person seems excessive, but nevertheless, he tells Utea that he understands. They conclude their meetings by chanting that everything is for the Great Moon, which is essentially a phrase how the Shadow Garden from Eminence in Shadow wraps up their meetings. Meanwhile, back to our MC. He finds himself buried in paperwork, as the new Count of Palladio. He explains that after his brother's funeral, he faced a full month of endless duties, and he feels overwhelmed by them. He starts shedding some tears, lamenting that he just wants to loaf around and do nothing. This fool even claims that's what it means to be a noble. Anyway, he couldn't help but think that even though he had made quite a few enemies, his brother Leo's death was supposed to happen 6 years from now. But with the strange circumstances surrounding all his brother's deaths, everything shifted, and now all the family responsibilities had landed on him as the sole heir. Just then, a few ministers from the county walked in, bringing even more paperwork for him to deal with. He closed his eyes and started to wonder why everyone in the county suddenly seemed to be working so hard. Back when his father was still the count, they would slack off and treat work like a rainy school day. He waved at them, signaling to drop the paperwork on his desk. But in the minister's eyes, he was radiating a deathly aura. They began to worry if they had somehow angered him, with some even vowing to work even harder to avoid any consequences. He was a secret mastermind who would eliminate anyone who displeased him. But having been a former workhorse himself, he wasn't handling all this pressure very well. He wondered if it would be possible to get the ministers to do all the work for him. Later that night, Evan was a bit shocked to find out that our boy had reached the 2nd tier in magic after just 2 years of self-study in poisoncraft, which meant he was quite talented and not shy about showing it. The little rascal was casting spells all over the house. Normally it takes about 4 to 5 years of instruction to reach the 2nd tier in magic, and it often requires a natural talent as well. Our protagonist agreed that his magical talent was pretty decent. Deep down, though, he knows he's been practicing hard for self-defense because something just doesn't feel right. To wield magic effectively for protection, one must have perfect control over their mana, just like he's managing to do at this moment. Still, he can't help but wonder what good his magic is if it's only half-baked. He insists he's tried every type of magic this fantasy world offers, and at first it was thrilling. He thought that mastering magic would mean he'd have nothing to fear, but now it feels more like he's scrambling to learn magic just to save his own skin. That's when the harsh reality hits him. His mana capacity is alarmingly small. Without enough mana, there's no magic, and that spells trouble, possibly even death. As he wallows in his predicament, we discover that innate mana capacity is akin to an athlete's natural weight class. While some are born with extraordinary talent, our main character is stuck with a minuscule mana pool, and no amount of training will change that. Yet he clings to a glimmer of hope. If all else fails, there's a way to fix it. Just then, Evan interrupts his thoughts, announcing that his invitation to the ball has finally arrived, leaving our present puzzled about what he's talking about. The scene shifts a few days later to the grand ball, where our main character makes his entrance in some truly majestic attire. The fit is impressive, but being the introverted guy he is, he claims to be already worn out, even though he just got there. This party, let's call it what it is your typical aristocratic gathering in the southern part of the Asteria Kingdom. It's basically a meet and greet for nobles, and since our MC is about to be sworn in as a count soon, he really has to show up. He gets into serious mode thinking this is his golden opportunity to network with the nobility, which is crucial for his ultimate goal of living a peaceful life. But soon enough he realizes that making those connections is going to be a lot tougher than he thought, as everyone seems to be fleeing from him in sheer terror. He even tries waving at them, but they literally just run away. Evan, his friend, tries to lift his spirits, telling him not to be down, but our guy insists he's not upset at all, even if his expression says otherwise. He tells Evan he expected this reaction, and vows to try harder as he heads out on his own. However, our protagonist seems a bit clueless about what's really happening. He thinks the other nobles are looking down on him for being a low-class noble without any backing, and he's not entirely wrong. The current Palladio household is indeed filled with troublemakers, like his 2 older brothers. Picking up a wine glass, he assists himself that he didn't come to the ball without a plan, and is determined to unlock the social skills he's been secretly honing. He starts talking aloud about the wine's unique aroma in an attempt to spark a conversation, but due to a mysterious condition that makes it hard for him to show emotions on his face, he ends up looking quite villainous, especially when he tries to smile. He'd tell the lady he'd love to have some bottles at home, all the while thinking his smile is perfect. But in her eyes, he resembles a demon king, and she bolts, saying she'll tell her father to prepare them right away. To the other nobles, it looks like our protagonist just extorted and blackmailed the poor lady into giving him a limited edition regional wine. What a mess. Evan tries to comfort him, while our protagonist insists that the lady must have just been shy. Later, we find him sulking in a corner while Evan is happily munching on food, teasing him about how his list of gifts has grown. It turns out the wine incident wasn't a one-off. Every time he tries to talk to someone, they think he's trying to blackmail them, handing him things like a Pensia citrus tea and more. He can't shake the thought that Palladio has become way more notorious than he ever imagined. With rumors swirling about him having killed his two brothers, he's basically turned into a figure of fear and dread. Feeling down, he tells Evan he needs some fresh air. As he steps outside, a certain red-haired beauty catches his eye. While he's out there, he can't help but wonder where it all went wrong. Suddenly, a soft voice calls out to him from behind, asking if he has a moment. He turns around, puzzled about where the voice came from since he doesn't see anyone. Looking down, he finally spots a cute young girl who introduces herself as Lauria, the third daughter of Duke Utea. Hearing the name Utea, our MC recognizes it from the game, and he explains that the Utea family was one of the 3 major shadow players in the psychedelia game, known as the Northern Troublemakers. This realization stung a bit, as he hoped someone normal had actually spoken to him. He also wondered why he couldn't recall this girl at all, had she not appeared in the game. Lauria, however, was straightforward, asking him to lend her his strength for protection, as she will be facing an assassination attempt soon. Lauria explains that she's in serious trouble and needs our protagonist's help, but when he looks at her, it's clear he's unsure. You see, Lauria has been living under the protection of her father's mistress, but now that her father's health has taken a turn for the worse, she fears her older sisters might try to eliminate her. Our main character can't help but think this situation mirrors his own past with his brothers. As he gazes at her, it dawns on him that the reason he didn't recognize Lauria from the game is that she must have already been dead and never made an appearance. Lauria, looking as adorable as ever, pleads for his assistance, claiming that with his abilities, he could really make a difference. But our protagonist firmly turns her down. She insists she's not coming to him empty-handed. If he saves her, she promises to share half of the Utea family fortune. Still, he walks away, feeling a twinge of sympathy for her. Deep down, he knows he can barely manage his own magic, so it's best not to give her any false hope. Despite wanting to help, he's not the all-powerful figure everyone thinks he is. As he heads into the party room, he can't shake the image of Lauria's sad face, which makes him feel guilty. He wishes her luck before stepping inside. Meanwhile, Deus and Ren, who have been observing from a distance, start to wonder what their next move should be, since one of the Utea family members has approached their master. Deus ponders whether he should report this to the Red Moon, a codename for Utea, but Ren reassures him that everything's okay because according to their intel, Lauria is the only member of Utea not tangled up with Avalon. This means she's pretty much safe since Radon, the one with the sin of mesophobia, has gone off to deal with the rest of her family. They've decided that the rest of the Utea household is going to be wiped out, all under the orders of the Red Moon. Ren adds that their main mission right now is to ensure their master doesn't catch wind of anything related to the Avalon situation. Meanwhile, our clueless main character is left wondering why everyone seems to be avoiding him. Does he have some sort of invisible barrier, keeping people at bay? Just then, the red-haired woman from earlier approaches him, and it genuinely brings a smile to his face. Well, more of an inward smile since he can't believe someone actually acknowledged him. He thinks maybe this time he'll actually manage to socialize. But as he turns around, he realizes she's not just any ordinary woman. She's another shadow player. Looking at her, he recalls seeing her face in the game, and it hits him that no normal person would approach him first, unless they were trouble. He greets her, calling her Lady Zenonia, which surprises her. How does he know her name? Our protagonist explains that she's quite famous in her own right. In the Asteria Kingdom, there are 3 prominent shadow player families: the Utea in the north, the Palladio in the east, and the Zenonia in the west. This stunning curvy lady is introduced as the eldest daughter of Count Zenonia, Kalaya. She asks him if she's really that well known, and he explains that while Kalaya Palladio runs a gang, the Zenonia family operates more like a clever criminal syndicate. Just thinking about it makes him shudder. He insists that what he really needs are some solid connections to help him maintain his peaceful, noble life. For the sake of that easy life he's always dreamed of, he believes he must steer clear of this curvy, stunning woman who seems like trouble. With a respectful bow, he compliments her beauty, almost as if he's trying to say goodbye, but she stops him, saying she wants to have a word with him about something. He replies that he'd love to, but there are too many eyes on them right now. Deep down, he wishes she would just leave him alone. With a smile, she tells him he's just as the rumors say, and adds that she looks forward to seeing him again, leaving him completely dumbfounded. As she walks away, he wonders what that could mean, sensing it's some kind of code, but he shakes it off. Meanwhile, Renee and Deus, who have been watching from a distance, are pleased that their mission to keep our protagonist in the dark is going smoothly. However, Deus points out a problem. Looking out the window where our protagonist is standing, they spot someone who has been tailing him for a while, and they quickly rush out to deal with the threat. The next day, our protagonist and Evan find themselves in a forest, with Evan asking if he's really sure this is the canyon he's been searching for. Evan notes that it's midday, the sun is shining, but the canyon is oddly dark. Our boy, however, isn't paying much attention. He's ecstatic that he's finally found his true objective. As they venture inside, he jokes that if this place turns out to be empty like the others, he might actually cry. But as he looks at the symbols on the walls, he realizes this is the real deal. He explains that in the game, finding this place was a breeze. Truthfully, he admits that the only reason he traveled all the way to the south under the guise of attending the ball was to discover this labyrinth right here. The labyrinth, it's called the Labyrinth of Whispers, and if you can crack all the riddles in its 8 rooms, you'll earn a powerful artifact as a reward. Exactly what he claims to have memorized all the routes and puzzles this labyrinth has to offer. Finally, he arrives at a massive door, and as he gazes at it, he confesses that seeing the labyrinth entrance in person is breathtaking. It feels so much more real than it did in the game. In the game, he tackled this labyrinth countless times. Evan, on the other hand, asks how our protagonist even knew a place like this existed. Our boy, without thinking, replies that he's been here often, leaving Evan puzzled about what this guy is talking about. Realizing he might have slipped up, our protagonist quickly backtracks, saying he was just kidding, and suggests they head inside. Once inside, they encounter some monsters and giant golem hands that could easily crush them like twigs. Evan wonders if these creatures are tied to the riddle, and if our boy gets the answer wrong, those giant hands will show no mercy. But our boy, unfazed, starts solving the riddle, leaving Evan to wonder how he can remain so calm in such a dire situation. Evan reflects that they've been together for 4 years now, yet he still doesn't understand him at all. Things like saving orphans, repaying random debts, helping free slaves, and even delivering seemingly pointless messages. Yeah, in Evan's eyes, our boy is a total weirdo. Still, watching him solve the riddles with ease makes Evan question how this is even possible. This guy has barely left the estate, yet he seems to know everything about this labyrinth. Regardless, Evan admits that the reason he keeps following this mysterious master of his is simple. Everything he does somehow leads to a good outcome. They finally make it inside, but our main character can't shake off the gruesome visuals of the game. He's feeling queasy, but as they step into a lavish room brimming with treasures and gold, his attention is immediately drawn to a hand statue adorned with multiple rings. He declares that their goal is the black ring, and insists they should grab it and get out fast. Meanwhile, Evan, who's busy stuffing his pockets with gold, questions why our protagonist is so fixated on the black ring, which looks like the least valuable of the bunch. Our hero explains that taking anything else could lead to trouble down the line. Deep down, he realizes he's finally got his hands on the ring that holds the oath of restraint. As they start to head back, our MC feels pretty pleased with himself, thinking that snagging the ring was a breeze thanks to his gaming knowledge. But Evan suddenly gets a bad vibe, and points out that the rock piles they passed while entering the canyon are actually golems, and they seem to be stirring. Evan quickly gets into battle mode, feeling anxious about their situation. To him, these golems are total unknowns, making this a nightmare scenario. He thinks that if he can just get his young master out safely, he wouldn't mind sacrificing himself. But our protagonist steps up, telling Evan to stand down because he'll take care of the golems. As the golems prepare to attack, Evan urges him to find an escape route first. With the golems closing in, Evan shouts a warning, saying his second-tier magic won't be enough to handle them. But our MC stands tall, confidently invoking the Oath of Restraint, which activates the black ring. Suddenly, time seems to slow, and he finds himself in a different dimension. A voice introduces itself as a fragment inheriting the great will of Nyasala, instructing our protagonist to state the 2 restrictions he wishes to impose on himself. Our main character finds himself in a pretty intense situation. In the game, this part showed up as a choice window, but now, hearing this mysterious voice and seeing a gigantic face looming in the dark cosmic expanse is a bit overwhelming. The Oath of Restraint is an absorption-type artifact, and as the name suggests, it lets the user impose limitations on themselves in exchange for power. However, the sheer force of the voice makes our MC tremble a bit. The voice urges him to declare his first restraint, and with a hand sign, he states that he will always perform the hand signs of Babylonia when casting magic. The voice then asks what he hopes to gain from this restriction, and our boy responds that he desires the ability to bend the laws of the world just a little more. The voice grants him this power. For his second restraint, our boy explains that he will strictly chant the words of Babylonia when using magic. When the voice inquires about his desire behind this restriction, he boldly claims he wants even greater power to defy the laws of the world, which momentarily surprises the mysterious entity. Our protagonist starts to worry that he might have messed something up, especially since the entity paused. He even mimicked the exact skill icon from the game just to be safe. By choosing both the hand signs and the word restrictions, he believes he can achieve the highest possible magic attack power. Thanks to all his repeated gameplay, he has memorized every combination used in the game, so this should work. Finally, the entity speaks again, confirming that his restraint has been granted. It expresses gratitude to the human who has remembered all the gestures and mysteries of the forgotten god. Our protagonist is puzzled by what the entity means, but he quickly notices that the ring is being absorbed, indicating that all the restrictions were successfully applied. The entity concludes by telling our MC that it will always be watching over him as the one who will inherit its will, whatever that means. Just then, time seems to start flowing again, and it's right as the golems launch their attack on our MC. Evan tries to reach him, but our hero, unfazed, begins to cast his magic. He can't help but chuckle at his own spell, thinking how in the game it looked so impressive and powerful. But now, thanks to his meager mana, it's just so small. He gathers it in his hand, reflecting that no matter how hard he pushes himself, this will always be his limit. But hey, it's time to test out his new restraints. I have to say, his magic looks majestic. Maybe it's the pose. Anyway, he starts chanting with the first word being refraction, which makes his magic begin to take shape. Then comes repulsion, causing it to swell in size, transforming into a stunning blue light of electric magic. The magic ball is massive. Using hand signs, he adds another chant for direction, and finally, he unleashes it. The way he does it is so grand, reminiscent of how Gojo releases his purple. The sheer power of our boy's magic leaves Evan in shock as the lightning obliterates all the golems, turning them to dust. In the aftermath, Evan can hardly believe his eyes, wondering what on earth just happened. He asks our protagonist if he's been hiding his power all this time, but our boy shakes his head. Evan explains that in all his 15 years as a mercenary, he's never seen anything like that. He questions if our MC is really sure that was second-tier magic, to which our boy confirms, though deep down he's just as confused about what transpired. He admits that this wasn't at all like it was in the game. In the game's turn-based battle system of psychedelia, magic could be enhanced each turn through hand signs or incantations. This time he boosted the chain lightning magic with all 4 incantations and hand signs for a total of 5 turns. In other words, he simply used magic settings for a large-scale lightning spell. However, because of his restraint oath, he had to use the hand signs and incantations for all his magic, meaning his spells were enhanced time and again. Even so, our protagonist felt that the second-tier magic he used was a bit over the top, and the results exceeded his expectations, which caught him off guard. Meanwhile, Evan was just relieved they made it out, and as he sat down, he remarked that watching the battle was way more exhausting than actually fighting. He asked our protagonist who had created such an unpleasant canyon. After a moment of thought, our hero realized that the Maze of Whispers had a different name in the game. The map layout and strategy guide were posted on the game's community website, and it was called the Maze of Palladio. He told Evan that a guy named Palladio was the one behind it, but Evan was too worn out to even process that information. I really love this duo. Our protagonist grabbed Evan, saying they needed to head back home because he had something in mind to do once they got there. This made Evan question why his usually lazy master was suddenly so motivated today. Our main character explained that every time he picked a hand sign that matched the spell's attribute he was casting, the power increased. If he chose the right incantation, the magic properties would get enhanced, which is how the game mechanics were designed to work. The only difference was that, unlike in the game where the visuals remained the same, and only the numbers went up. In this world, the spell actually changed shape with each incantation. But he suddenly wonders if this only applies to him, especially since he's particularly skilled at controlling mana. He decides he'll need to test it out once his mana has recovered, but for now he's just relieved that everything turned out okay. As they prepare to leave on their horses, we see Ren, who has been quietly following our main character, watching the whole scene unfold. She quickly makes her way to the canyon, and upon arriving she spots the runes on the wall, and realizes she can actually read them. She explains that these are the glyphs of the Alanef Empire, which essentially tell the story of the era of the forgotten outer gods. Rena's eyes catch another glyph hidden in a corner, which she translates as, "For my friend who shall be left alone, from the coward Palon." As she examines the glyphs more closely, a smile spreads across her face. She shares that the one who halted the invasion of the dark creatures, standing victorious against the Al-Alkalaka that devoured the hearts of the citizens, was none other than the brilliant emperor known as Palon the Great. The reason she knows all this is that she inherited all this knowledge at birth, thanks to the ancient library she received. She briefly recalls our main character mentioning that Palon was the one who built the canyon. But as usual, she misinterprets the situation. She thinks that she knew our MC was special, since someone like the bloody Queen Utea follows him, which is a pretty big deal. Having someone like Utea as a subordinate is something you'd only read about in history books. However, she continues to believe that our MC is actually a friend of Palon, completely misreading the glyphs he saw. Moreover, she claims that the phrase our boy used while casting magic doesn't exist anywhere in the ancient library, which only strengthens her belief that our MC is truly remarkable. Blushing, she admits that Utea was right all along, feeling a bit embarrassed about having followed orders without question all this time. And just like that, our boy ends up with another yonder in his harem. Kind of a strange thing to say since they're basically just kids, but I digress. Anyway, Rena spots Deus arriving and immediately asks if he got any info from the fool who was tailing their great master. Deus responds that the idiot is dead, and he didn't even do it. It's more like the guy's head just twisted in midair. Rena insists they need to report this back to Utea for processing, and Deus agrees, so they head out. Meanwhile, in Zenonia County, Lady Kalia is sipping her tea, pondering how our main character is just as the rumors say. She notes his chilling, emotionless expression and those abyss-like eyes. It bothers her that he called her famous. Count Zenonia is indeed strong and well-known, but for our protagonist to label her as famous despite not being involved in social activities is quite intriguing. What's really going on here is that Kalia is the true mastermind, using black magic to control her father, the Count, making her the real head of the family. The fact that our boy called her famous makes her think he might know something about her secret, which terrifies her since no one is aware that she's turned her father into a puppet. She recalls how our protagonist mentioned there are too many eyes on them, which she misinterprets as him having discovered the person she had following him. Now that's a classic case of misunderstanding, like something out of an Eminence in Shadow scenario. Suddenly, Kalia gets a call from one of her servants, who says there's a problem. Well, she asks what's going on, and the servant insists that it's better for her to see it for herself. When she heads to her room, she discovers that the person she had following our main character is dead. The servant explains that since the seal on the body didn't activate, it means he didn't spill any secrets. But Kalia quickly points out that the person who killed her man must have intentionally brought him to her room. Frustrated, she starts questioning how our main character figured out she was the one who sent this guy to tail him. And just like that, our poor MC gets misunderstood once again. Later that night at the Utea Dachel estate, Lauria was feeling pretty low. She couldn't shake the feeling that our main character was exactly what she expected, someone not to be taken lightly. To her, he had those cold eyes reminiscent of her father's, and it made sense why he was known as the distinguished one of the underworld. It kind of reminds me of the honored one from JJK, but I digress. Lauria realized she could never afford to make an enemy out of him, yet he was also her last hope. However, since he turned down her request for help, she misread his refusal, thinking it was clear he wouldn't take a deal that would leave him with nothing, especially since she had lost all her assets and power to her siblings. Speaking of siblings, there's the eldest son, Timalian, the eldest daughter, Marian, the second daughter, Piran, and the second son, Keeg. Being the youngest and the weakest, Lauria felt completely powerless. As she walked into the estate, she reflected on how she had managed to survive this long, thanks to her father's love and mercy. But now that he was fading from the picture, she felt lost. Suddenly, She was jolted from her thoughts when the servants rushed in, breathlessly reporting that her siblings had all taken their own lives. She was left in utter disbelief. She knew they would never do something like that. Those fools would rather stab each other in the back. Literally, the idea of them ending their own lives was just insane. She quickly demanded to know what had happened to Tamalian and Marion, only to hear that they had met the same fate. In a shocking twist, we see them actually stabbing each other, and it felt like the work of Deus pulling the strings. But it wasn't. As Lauria stands there in shock, trying to wrap her head around what just happened, we catch a glimpse of Redun, the sin of misophobia, striding out of the Utea castle, boldly announcing that the mission is complete. As Redun fades into the night, Lauria is still reeling from the events. She recalls our MC reassuring her that she shouldn't worry because good things are on the horizon. Like everyone else, she's convinced that our MC is the true mastermind behind it all. In her mind, he's been playing it cool, hiding his claws until the perfect moment to seize control. Essentially, Lauria believes that our MC turned down her request at the party, but secretly took out her siblings. Honestly, I can see why she'd think that. Just like our protagonist, she suddenly became the sole heir of the Duckle family overnight, which is pretty terrifying. Lauria starts to panic, questioning what kind of monstrous devil she's made a pact with. It's actually kind of hilarious. These folks are treating our MC like some all-powerful overlord, but if they only knew he's just a laid-back guy who prefers to chill all day. Anyway, Lauria is in full-on panic mode because there's no turning back now, and she can't shake the thought of what happens to those who betray our MC, especially with so many examples already out there. She steels herself to follow the path she's chosen. 2 months later, back at the Palladio estate, our main character receives a few gifts from the Duke of Utea. When he sees one of the gifts, Evan is taken aback. It's a bottle of Cernan's wine, which is worth a small fortune, costing a few thousand gold coins per bottle. He can't believe he's actually holding one in his hands. As he reads the note inside, he's even more surprised to find it simply says, "With respect from Lauria Utea." This leaves him puzzled because Lauria is the one who sent him this gift, not her father. It dawns on him that this isn't just some noble trying to make a connection, and he can't quite wrap his head around it. Deep down, he feels a twinge of guilt for not being able to help her back then. He quickly asks the delivery guy if he's sure this gift is really meant for him, and the guy nods, explaining that the Duke herself prepared it, and insisted he deliver it personally. That's when it hits him. Lauria has officially become the Duke of the Utea Dukedom, which completely surprises him. By the way, doesn't Lauria seem a bit older than she should? It's only been a 2-month time skip, but who's counting? Lauria, on her end, reflects on how quickly those 2 months have flown by. She shares that after her father's funeral, she took on the role of Duke following the succession ceremony. Looking around her office, she remembers how she couldn't even step foot in this room back then. The loss of her siblings happened so suddenly, but she was never suspected because she had a solid alibi. She was at the ball. She recalls that during that time, her siblings had taken down her secret organization, and when she returned to the mansion, she felt utterly powerless. But now she realizes that it was a surprising turn of events. Essentially, Lauria thinks our main character picked the perfect moment to take out her siblings, and even managed to give her an alibi, which makes her think he must have an incredibly high IQ to come up with such a plan. To Lauria, it seems like our MC pretended not to care about helping her, all to keep up appearances at the party that night, while he was actually busy cleaning up the mess behind the scenes. It's like some overlord-level scheming. These folks are really elevating our MC to legendary status. She even wonders just how far ahead he can see. She mentions that she didn't even bring up her father's funeral to him because she didn't want to add to his burdens. In any case, Lauria wraps up her thoughts by concluding that our MC must have helped her, because he needs the Utea dukedom for some part of his grand plan. She acknowledges that while she managed to unite all the subordinate organizations of the Utea dukedom, it still wouldn't be enough to match the hidden power our MC possesses, which can only mean one thing. He's after something from her. She points out that our MC is the Count of Palazzo, a major player in the underworld, who has built his power and influence solely through his business savvy. Lauria wonders if there's even anything she could offer him that he doesn't already have. She also speculates whether our MC needs the Utea name to continue manipulating the political landscape from the shadows. But for now, she decides to focus on her own tasks, knowing that the Distinguished One will reach out to her soon. And just like that, our boy adds another problem child to the orphanage. And honestly, The nickname The Distinguished One is just too cool. I'm loving this series. Blushing, Lauria hopes that our MC appreciated her gift and the gratitude she sent his way. Yeah, things are definitely getting a bit out of control. Back to our MC. The delivery guy takes off, leaving him still bewildered about everything that's happening. He reflects on how Lauria was threatened with death, and now she's the Duke. Even Evan is scratching his head wondering what's going on with our boy. But our MC senses that something feels off. Fast forward a few months. 5 years before the original story kicks off, and our boy has matured quite a bit. As Evan approaches him, he asks if he should start calling him Count from now on, but our boy reassures him that he can call him whatever he likes, since the succession ceremony hasn't happened yet. However, since a year has passed while he's been acting as the Count, the ceremony doesn't really hold much weight anymore. Deep down, our boy starts to feel a bit downcast, realizing that he never intended to become the Count in the first place. His original plan was pretty straightforward. This little rascal even jotted down some rules for himself on how to enjoy life in psychedelia. First, avoid the succession war. Second, settle down in Rodmill. And lastly, embark on a gourmet adventure. But he lifts his spirits, thinking that since he's gotten used to this new role, he can really make the most of being a noble. Which is true because the balance between work and relaxation is way better than he ever imagined. Anyway, Evan hands him a letter saying it's from Utea. As they head inside, our MC asks Evan if he's found out anything about the assassins who took his brother Leo's life. But Evan admits he hasn't got any leads yet. Still, he encourages our MC to give the Information Guild some time, since they're still on the case. This actually sheds light on why Utea was so jumpy, and asks the other sins to ensure our boy didn't find out they were behind Leo's death. Anyway, Evan then asks what our boy plans to do with that information, sure that it's not about revenge, but our boy thinks to himself that the slight changes from the original game are probably butterfly effects caused by his actions, so he tells Evan he just wants to be ready for any surprises. Evan teasingly remarks that he sounds like a real Count when he says that, but our boy just lets out a sigh. As he opens the letter from Utea, he can't help but wonder what he has to share this time. In her letter, Utea fills him in on life at the orphanage, mentioning how everyone is diving into their own hobbies. She highlights Deus, who she claims has become quite the expert in puppet manipulation. Almost professional, she says. Then there's Sailrang, who loves gaming with her friends, and Rena, who still has her nose buried in books, but has also taken to building sand castles. And Radon. He's found joy in nurturing his garden. Hearing all this brings a smile to his face. This monthly ritual of exchanging letters has become a comforting routine, and each message warms his heart a little more. Even though he's never seen these kids in person, knowing they're thriving fills him with joy. He realizes, though, that he doesn't actually know how old they are. Curious, he asks Evan, who points out that they're now at an age where they can step out into the world. Evan mentions that the 5 great sins are just about ready to leave the orphanage, which surprises him. He hadn't expected them to grow up so quickly. He even pictures them as adults, coming back to thank him for everything he's done. It dawns on him that it might be time to let them go. When Evan questions this, reminding him that he brought them to the orphanage because they were hurting, he reassures him that they've grown enough to stand on their own now. It's time for them to forge their own paths. Deep down, he knows he cared for them just enough to prevent them from becoming the deadly sins, so they should be all right. Evan nods in agreement, acknowledging that since they're all healthy, it makes sense to set them free. Our boy recalls that in the psychedelia game, each boss battle came with a vivid description of its setting through narration. Utea had the gift of faith, Deus wielded the sword, Renee excelled in studying, Shulrang was a natural fighter, and Radon had the calling of an apostle. Essentially, our main character believes that if these kids harness their talents in the right ways and in the right areas, they'll be just fine when they step out into the world. So he's decided to write each of them a personal letter, and in a moment of self-praise, he thinks his plan is absolutely brilliant. While he's at it, he figures he should also prepare a special gift for each one of them. He can't help but imagine how thrilled the kids will be. After spending the entire day crafting the letters, he finally finishes up. Evan, who was meant to keep him company, has dozed off, and as soon as he wakes, he rushes off to deliver the letters before RMC can catch him. I really adore the bond between these two. RMC wonders if he might get something back from these little landmines of his. Once they make a name for themselves in the world, he wraps up his thoughts by encouraging them all to read his letter and venture out into the world, which is genuinely heartwarming. However, contrary to his intentions, the kids take his letters with utmost seriousness as if they've received a direct command from Ains from Overlord. With a serious demeanor, Utea informs the others that their orders have arrived, adding that their lord has prepared something special for each of them. And I have to say, even though it's only been about a year since the time skip, these kids have really grown up. Just look at Deus, he's so tall now. I kind of miss how small they used to be, but it's all good. As they each check out their letters, their reactions vary. Deus stays cool and collected as usual. Solrong can't contain his excitement and starts jumping for joy. Ren is still simping for our main character, and Utea looks a bit confused by it all. Utea reminds the other sins that before they dive into anything else, they should all take a moment to read the previous letters she's been getting from our character. Utea insists that understanding our boy's orders requires a bit more insight. Hearing this, Solrong lights up, asking if they can really all read them now, since before only Utea had that privilege. Utea reassures them that since their lord and master has decided to give each of them individual orders, it's clearly time for everyone to be in the loop. However, as they read the letters, they're left speechless, because the content is just casual small talk. Utea quickly comforts them, explaining that our MC has always liked to disguise his orders as ordinary conversation. She even shows them the very first letter he sent her, which is just a friendly greeting and a complaint about how his brothers were picking on him. But Utea interprets it differently, claiming that our MC was actually giving a target for elimination and asking them to report back once a month. This misunderstanding continues, and the other sins just roll with it as if it's the most normal thing in the world. Deus points out that our MC is doing this to prevent any leaks of information, and Utea confirms this, explaining that that's why they all need to learn to decipher our boy's orders through the letters and carry them out. Deus then questions whether, if our MC is worried about leaks, wouldn't it be better for them to visit him in person, or use a magic communicator? Redden agrees, saying that Deus has a valid point, since letters are the riskiest when it comes to information leaks. But Utea, with a cold gaze, reminds them that they must never question the will of their great master. All they need to do is follow his orders. Even Deus feels a bit intimidated, and reassures Utea that he hasn't forgotten. Meanwhile, Saorang, on the other hand, is just thrilled to have received a letter. She encourages the others to read theirs too, and as each of them opens their respective letters, they interpret the messages in their own unique ways. Deus announces that his orders are to head to Caliburn, the nation of knights, while Saorang mentions she's supposed to go to the colony, which is smack in the middle of a desert. Redden says he's off to Raxus, the entertainment city, and Ren is set for Larthania, the maze city. Then there's Utea, who in her full yandere mode, insists she's heading to the Rosario Kingdom. And honestly, what's up with that artist? Why did they draw our girl like that? Not that I'm complaining, though. Utea then asks if everyone knows what they should do once they arrive, and they all nod in agreement. Deus admits he's not entirely sure why, but his orders are to become a knight. Saorang reassures everyone that they've also been told not to worry, as the patronage will continue. Rena chimes in, saying their master has also revealed the gifts, and Redden adds that whatever those gifts are, they'll find out when they get there. Utea praises them all, and reminds them to keep one crucial thing in mind. Unless their great master says it first, they should never mention the name of the Blue Moon. This basically means they can't reveal our boy's real name under any circumstances. And just like that, all the sins left the orphanage, ready to embark on their respective missions. 3 months later, back at our protagonist's desk, he was diving into some research on magic. As he sifted through the information, he realized it was just as he feared. There was nothing new about the changes in magic and its phases. This meant he'd have to figure things out on his own. Glancing over at Evan, who was nearby, he asked how the search for the person who killed his brother Leo was progressing. Evan replied that the Information Guild still hadn't uncovered anything, leaving our protagonist deep in thought. He couldn't shake the feeling that the butterfly effect had spiraled out of control. After all, he had saved the 5 deadly sins, and even Lauria, who should have died long ago, was not only alive, but had also become a duke. That was pretty unsettling. She was amassing power and influence in the underworld at a frightening pace. Dude, he really doesn't get that all this influence is being set up for him. He then instructed Evan to halt the investigation into his brother's assassin. When Evan asked if he was sure about that, our protagonist reflected that sometimes ignorance is bliss. In the game world, it seemed like nothing could escape the Information Guild's network. And since this situation was doing just that, it felt like a recipe for trouble. He worried that these kinds of things could lead to unforeseen and pointless deaths. Ultimately, he reasoned that as long as he didn't interfere with the organization that killed his brother, they wouldn't pose a threat to him. There was no reason for them to attack unless he approached them first, and he had no plans to do that. So he told Evan that there was no point in continuing the search, and Evan nodded in agreement, saying he would inform the Information Guild to stop the investigation. Switching gears, Evan shares some news. It seems Deus has just been named a knight in Caliburn. Our boy, fully aware this was coming, simply brushes it off with a casual, good for him. 3 months later, and Evan has more updates. Deus has apparently formed an entire knight order, but again our boy shrugs it off, only remarking on Deus's talent. He then asks if this means Deus has reached at least the sword expert level, or maybe even higher. The sword skills are divided into 3 tiers: sword user, sword expert, and sword master. Our boy figures it hasn't been long since Deus was knighted, but Evan points out that people are buzzing about it, claiming the world will see the 5th Master Knight in under 10 years. Curious, our boy asks if Evan is referring to the rank of Sword Caliburn when he mentions Master Knight, and Evan confirms it, hearing that our boy can't help but feel a swell of pride. 6 months later, a whole year has passed since the 5 deadly sins left the orphanage, and by now our boy is settling into his responsibilities as a count. Suddenly, Evan calls out to him with some fresh news. Deus has become a Sword Caliburn, officially making him the 5th Master Knight in the kingdom. Our boy is taken aback and reminds Evan that only sword masters can achieve the title of Master Knight. The Sword Master of Psychedelia is a superhuman who has surpassed the Aura Blade and unlocked a unique ability called derivation. He presses Evan again, asking if he's sure Deus has really become a sword master. Evan clarifies that, to be precise, Deus is on the verge of becoming one, he just hasn't developed his derivation yet. Still, the kingdom has already bestowed upon him the title of Master Knight, and on top of that he has triumphed in a duel against the 4th sword. Evan adds that the 4th sword also fell to the northern barbarians, which our boy confirms, noting that according to the game's lore, they should have been at war for over a decade. Evan goes on to explain that mastering mana and learning to manipulate it within a person's body takes about 15 years, and creating a derivation can take several decades. The first sword, Reinhardt, was just 32 when he became the youngest Master Knight in history. And this all happens during the main story's Act 3. Reinhardt was incredibly strong. Even with his natural talent, it took him over 20 years to reach that level. Now here's Deus, a child with no sword knowledge, who's already a Master Knight. Our boy thinks that if Deus is just waiting for his derivation, it basically means he's surpassed Reinhardt while still being a sword master. He wonders if he can latch onto him sooner than he thought. And Evan, as usual, just nods as if it's the most normal thing in the world. But our boy quickly dismisses that idea, saying he can't do that. Just like that, Evan shifts his tone again. Anyway, our protagonist feels like Utea is the only one who truly cares about him. It's been a whole year, and the only letters he's received have been from her. Even while navigating through the Holy Kingdom, Utea kept sending him updates about the deadly sins, which shows they've been in touch. Yet he can't help but feel a bit down that these kids, despite never having seen his face, should have at least thanked him for the gifts he prepared for them back then. He feels a pang of guilt, but slaps himself across the face to refocus. He tells himself he's grateful they haven't destroyed the kingdom after awakening to their deadly sin powers. He reassures himself that as long as they're doing okay, he's happy with that. But I don't think Evan is buying it, though. In the heart of Caliburn, right in the bustling central area of Kirtham, stands the Grand Mansion, where the esteemed Solar Eclipse Knights make their home. As the knights went about their usual training routines, our boy Deus watched from above. Known as the captain of the Solar Eclipse Knights and the youngest Master Knight in the kingdom, he had a lot on his mind. For the first time, we also catch a glimpse of his adorable little sister. From Deus' perspective, it's hard to believe that a whole year has passed since he left the orphanage. Reflecting on that time still makes him feel a bit embarrassed. You see, when Deus lost everything to the Black Organization, he was separated from his sister, whom he thought he had lost forever. That experience filled him with uncontrollable rage and hatred. It was during this dark time that our boy saved him. Deus explains that just being saved wasn't enough for him to pledge his loyalty right away. But when Utea promised him a chance for revenge, he decided to follow orders under the Blue Moon, which led him through countless dangerous missions and intense training. Looking back, Deus admits he didn't care much about the missions or his own well-being. For years, he carried out tasks that would lay the groundwork for fighting against the dark forces. Eventually, he received his very first personal order, but honestly, he felt a bit skeptical about it, especially with our boy letter involved. In the letter, our boy instructed him to head to a small hotel in southern Caliburn, mentioning that he had left a gift for him there. At that moment, Deus wasn't particularly excited about the gift. However, when he stepped into that hotel, he was completely taken aback. Inside that unexpected letter from our main character was something truly precious. The gift was his long-lost family, his little sister. As he embraced her tightly, Deus realized this was a gift more valuable than life itself. Our MC embraced his sister tightly. His voice trembled as he tried to speak through the tears. He said that the sister he had believed to be dead was still alive. Overwhelmed by pain and relief, he looked at her and asked what had happened after he lost her. Stella also cried while holding her brother's arm, offering a faint smile of comfort. A little later, they sat together with cups of tea. When she had calmed, she began to explain. After those people dragged her away, she had been trapped in darkness for a long time. The memories returned vividly as she spoke. She described being locked inside a pitch-black cage, waiting for the moment she would be taken out to be killed. When her turn finally came, someone terrifyingly strong appeared. That person grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the light, allowing her to escape and survive. Years later, when she was nearly sold to a slave merchant, another powerful figure protected her again. A blade cut through the attackers, saving her a second time. That person was Alan's knight, Yuan, who rescued Styla, Dana's sister. Returning to the present, Styla explained that after those events, he had received precious medicine from a sponsor. She confidently repeated his words while holding Alan's letter. She explained that the letter had been handed to him directly, and that Alan continued to send medicine and support without fail. The name written on the letter was Alan Palladio, and the message stated that Alan had sent everything specifically for Styla, and she added that Alan had instructed him to deliver it personally. By that moment, our MC understood that the Great Moon had been acting for her sake as well. He already knew how precious she was to him, and she cheerfully said that the great sponsor had helped her more than she could ever express. She felt deeply grateful for everything he had done. Alan had supported them through his knight Yuan because he wished to keep his true identity hidden. Our MC, however, was stunned. Shock spread across his face as he whispered that the Great Moon had been protecting her under his own name. He could not understand how the Great Moon even knew about their situation. He stated that he had never spoken about his family to anyone. Only Utea had noticed the black lamp that once targeted him. He grew serious, gripping his own shoulders as he asked himself how the Great Moon knew everything. Everyone recognized the Great Moon as the unparalleled prodigy behind countless stories, someone who seemed aware of every hidden truth. At the same time, memories flickered inside our MC's mind. Moments connected to Utea. Confusion and disbelief pulled at him like threads snapping together into a single picture. Everything suddenly aligned. He struggled to understand the anxiety Utea had shown whenever she spoke about the Great Moon, the nervousness in her voice, and her repeated reminder that a sword could never act on its own without its master. Darkness washed through his thoughts as he realized that the foolish one had been himself. Yet a glimmer of hope remained. He remembered the words he had once heard. The Great Moon already knew everything, and had been leaving hints for the child who would be forced to survive alone. His body trembled, his voice shaking as this truth finally struck him. Styla pulled him out of that spiraling realization and asked why he looked so stunned. Inside, our Missy understood that his own sword had dared to act alone, yet the Great Moon had chosen to be merciful. The narrator's view widened, revealing how the Great Moon, Alan, had been guiding our MC's life like a carefully arranged strategy, almost as if controlling him like a puppet. Our MC whispered that he had spent all those years consumed by hatred and revenge against the black sheep, never realizing the truth behind everything. Our MC looked at his sister. Her cheerful expression carried the brightness of someone who had emerged from a long, terrifying darkness. She had survived, saved the Great Moon, and protected their family. To him, that survival felt like a gift beyond measure. His thoughts twisted again as Utea's words echoed in his mind. She had always told him that one day he would understand why she followed the man who was truly terrifying, the Great Moon. Our MC realized she had never been a fanatic, nor someone who clung to blind trust. She had earned Caliban and become a knight through her own will, and yet she prayed to Alan as if he were a god. Now our mech finally understood why. Determination tightened his expression. He declared that his mission was to reach the pinnacle of Caliban, to stand as a master knight, and to create a personal knight order composed of the finest swordsmen devoted to the great moon. He also understood why Utea always said that Alan was her god and lifesaver. She felt nothing but unwavering loyalty toward him. Fueled by his decision, our Emak embraced the path of sword mastery in the creation of his knight order. The story of their rise began to take shape. Sometime later, Banu stood on the balcony. A tall knight approached and informed him that the time had come. Banus walked forward and looked down at the assembled knight order. He announced that this expedition would become the first stepping stone for the solar skeletons. Hardship meant nothing to him. He gripped his mesmerizing yet terrifying sword and declared that he awaited the day he could offer his gratitude to the great moon, along with a repayment that would satisfy him. His eyes glowed with dark determination, his loyalty toward the prodigy of their age unwavering. He vowed to prove himself under the moon. The solar skeleton knights then departed for an expedition against the barbarians. Our MC sat outside quietly, thinking that the place felt peaceful, perhaps because all his subordinates had grown into capable warriors. Meanwhile, Alan examined his book and muttered that everyone had flown away from him, and he no longer wanted more information for now. His life felt increasingly chaotic, yet he reminded himself to focus. He joked about needing to stop writing in cursive and promised himself he would write more clearly. After returning from the labyrinth, he shifted his attention to researching the phrases he had encountered. Alan let out a quiet chuckle, satisfied that his reports were finally complete. As he leaned back, he reviewed the concepts he had been analyzing: reinforcement of magical imprintation and the behavior of refraction within spells. He noted that refraction strengthened the imperfections inside a completed spell, allowing its rage to expand outward, while repulsion distorted the structure and influenced the transition of a fired projectile. The phenomenon still amazed him. With the universe law in his hands, his ability to manipulate the very rules that govern reality, he could alter magic beyond its original limits. According to his observations, blue light reinforced parallel magic, such as electrical attacks. He developed a theory that lines of diffraction allowed penetration, which created a critical effect upon impact. When he struck the golem earlier, the massive creature had been obliterated instantly. Despite its size and strength, it had been completely vaporized. For him, the rule always mattered, and not a single phrase within a spell could afford a mismatch. However, with his current mana, he could only use one magic of that scale per day. Fatigue pressed heavily on him. It had taken a long time to understand even this much. He grew serious as he remembered the world's limitations. The hand signs and phrases of baby Rowena had been lost long ago, leaving no record of them. Nothing existed in the written history of this world, so he was forced to research alone and build the missing pieces from scratch. Even so, he found himself oddly enjoying the challenge despite having learned magic only for self-protection. He placed his fingers together, preparing the spell he had been refining for 2 months. A crackling purple light formed in front of him. Alan described the result aloud, noting that eliminating the focal point of the mana phrase would force the imbalance required to create lightning. A small sphere of purple lightning appeared. Alan called it a weak and limited form, merely a flexion spell. Yet the moment he finished the chant, a wave of thunder rippled from it, completing the structure. He continued, chanting again. Compression. The condensed magic cannon tightened as the phrases broke down and reshaped themselves. At the final instant, he completed the last hand sign, triggering the purpose built into the spell. A violent thunder cannon erupted upward, blasting into the sky. Massive energy flooded the area, shaking the ground as bright blue lightning washed across the field like a roaring tide. Alan stood frozen, unable to believe the force that had been released. The order of the spell phrases had mattered more than anything. When he had attempted to use breakdown first, the spell failed instantly. But now, a voice echoed behind him. Impossible. Alan turned sharply. Shock stiffened his expression when he saw the figure standing there. Kalia, the red-haired woman villain of her kingdom, murderer of her father, and the one who had always wanted to turn Alan into her puppet, stood with her butler. Her eyes were fixed on the remnants of lightning still flickering in the air. The butler's eyes widened. Origin magic. Using origin magic means he stands at the caliber of a 7th circle mage. Alan stiffened again, stunned by the term. Origin circle. He had never heard his abilities described like that. Yet the truth was clear. Someone had just named what he had become. Alan's expression twisted with disbelief as he watched the two of them stare at him with those ridiculous, exaggerated faces. He wondered how they could look so foolish at such a moment. Their reactions reminded him of his days at the academy, and his thoughts drifted back to a memory of his professor. During his time in Clyburn, the nation of knights, he had once received advice from that professor. The man had explained that one could establish an order only after gaining recognition from the king, and Alan had originally intended to become a mage simply to defend himself. He wanted strength only for protection, both for himself and for those he cared about. Yet his professor had never taken him seriously. Instead, the man had treated him like a pet, constantly praising him and patting his head with the flat of his sword. He would call Alan talented, claiming him as his own student, begging him not to leave the country because he considered him precious. The narrator had even shown how fondly the professor looked at him. Alan, however, had always been annoyed by those assumptions. His magic ability had not come from the professor. None of it had been inspired or created by that man. Every spell, every theory, every refinement, he had achieved them through his own research. The story then shifted toward the coming tension. The next chapter would reveal another twist as Alan prepared more dangerous spells and tested more destructive magic. Meanwhile, Kalia, the red-haired woman who had killed her father and aimed to claim the kingdom, had reappeared with her butler. Alan had never helped her, yet she continued devising schemes to devour him for her own ambition. She always planned in the shadows, but Alan had a superior mind. The moment he recognized her intention, he quietly prepared to use Kalia as a pawn in a far greater strategy of his own. Inside Alan Castle, the red-haired Lady Kalia sat quietly in the reception room of the Platino family. Her butler stood beside her, and she tried to steady her thoughts. But tension kept rising the moment she remembered how she felt when she first saw Alan. She had come here for two clear reasons. First, Alan possessed a card capable of delivering a devastating blow to Genonia. Second, she needed to confirm Count Lauria Platino's intentions, and since through magic, the power Alan had absorbed from Platino. As she organized her thoughts, she spoke about Alan's brilliance. To her, Alan was a prodigy, the great moon, immense and unmatched in potential. She could easily picture him wielding enough power to hold the entire Palestinian territory in his grasp. With the support of the Blue Moon organization protecting him, his future was even more terrifying. Her butler suddenly trembled, unable to hide his fear at the mere mention of Alan's strength. Kalia glanced at him, surprised that someone like him would react this way. To think that a man as arrogant as him would tremble because of Alan. Her butler, Benjel, was a 5th-rank mage who had been expelled from the mage tower for conducting inhuman experiments. His strength was undeniable, a man capable of wiping out an entire battalion with a single spell. Despite years of her support, he had never bowed his pride to anyone. Yet Alan made even him shudder. Kalia studied her butler carefully. The terror on Benjel's face was deeper than anything she had ever witnessed from him. A chill ran through her as she realized she could feel that fear rising from within him, something she had never imagined possible. A disturbing thought crossed her mind. Could my own mage truly be unable to stand against our prodigy, Alan? And could Brad really be someone who reached the level of an origin mage? The possibility tightened her nerves even further. Before she could steady herself, Alan opened the door without hesitation. His expression was unreadable, cold and unshaken. He looked straight at Kalia and Benjil, his voice carrying no warmth. "What business brings you to the Count's estate?" Kalia answered as calmly as she could. "I apologize for coming without notice. This is the Count's territory. I lost my way while trying to find you, Count." Alan examined her closely and replied, "I will not hold it against you, Lady Genonia. Now tell me, what is the purpose of your visit to my castle?" His gaze remained hard, his tone sharp, and there was nothing gentle in the way he spoke. He sat on the sofa with steady confidence before continuing. "Let me make one thing absolutely clear. What I used earlier was not the magic of an origin mage. If you feel the need to assign it a rank, it would be closer to the 2nd rank." Then he shifted his eyes to Benjil, making sure both of them understood. I'm sure you sensed it, mage. That magic has no real function. It serves neither defense nor offense. He paused, his voice dropping into a cold warning. In other words, it would be best if you keep what you saw to yourselves. Kalia and Benjil stiffened in terror. She felt her breath shake and immediately responded, trembling. Yes, Count. I must have misunderstood. I won't speak of it to anyone. Shock flickered across her face as she added softly, Benjil is using something horrifying. Alan exhaled slowly and replied with calm relief. Good. That's reassuring. Alan, the great moon, the prodigy she feared and admired, continued speaking with his calm, unshaken tone. Since the misunderstanding is cleared up, what is the real reason for your visit? Kalia gathered herself and responded politely. We were nearby on other business and wished to pay our respects. So there is no particular matter? Alan asked. She denied it immediately. There is not. Alan rose slightly, his voice steady. Regrettably, I have work to attend to, so I cannot spare much time for conversation. Understanding the clear dismissal, Kalia stood and bowed. I understand. Thank you for granting me even a brief audience. I will take my leave. But Alan spoke again before she turned away. If what you seek is someone to talk to, Kalia froze at his unexpected words. He finished coldly. It may be best to visit Duke Altai. I have a feeling the two of you would get along well. She blinked, unsure of what Alan was implying or what scheme he intended. Still, she bowed again with proper courtesy. Hearing your words, I will keep that in mind. I shall visit Duke Altai's castle. Moments later, she and Benjil stepped out of the mansion and left the estate. Outside, Alan stood with his knight Yuan. Yuan watched the retreating pair and asked, If that was Genonia, why would a ruined Western family come looking for us? Alan answered with a casual tone, I have no idea. Nothing comes to mind. Inside, however, a quiet thought surfaced. Good grief, this is troublesome. Outside the mansion, Alan's mind tightened with a single thought. If rumors spread that I'm using origin mage magic, people desperate for power will come hunting. And this world is nothing but a dark fantasy. An intruder could appear at any moment, trying to kill me and steal my abilities. The possibility alone felt suffocating. Returning to reality, Alan muttered softly, You understand what I mean, don't you? There is no reason for Genonia to approach Altai. Those two families are rivals in the underworld. A cold tension settled in him. In any case, don't come to me alone again. Inside the carriage, Kalia's POV. As the carriage moved, Kalia broke the silence. Count Palestinian's magic? Was it truly origin magic? Benjil trembled. No, it was not. Then your reaction earlier. What was that? Benjil took a slow breath, fear tightening his voice. Origin magic is created by drawing new laws onto the canvas of absolute immutable principles. That privilege belongs only to a supreme archmage. But his expression shifted as he recalled what he had witnessed. The Count was completely different. His eyes widened in terror. When I activated my observation eye and looked at his magic, the canvas itself was being torn apart. He saw again the overwhelming presence of the great moon. Alan, a force that felt omniscient and overpowering. Benjil continued, his voice shaking. He twisted the absolute principles by himself, fixing lightning in place, reshaping and collapsing laws, yet still manifesting a spell. A miracle so absurd it defies reason. Kalia stared at him, stunned. Benjil pressed on, his gaze sharp with conviction. Behind that power, I saw something dark, something demonic, an eye capable of manipulating any law. His voice dropped into a whisper. It was unmistakably the work of a forgotten great god. He clutched his head tightly, shouting, I need to stop. Thinking any further is dangerous. After a difficult breath, he continued. I once earned praise for studying forbidden knowledge magic from the Forgotten Era. That is why I'm certain. His voice turned cold as ice. Do not oppose Count Palestinian and never make him your enemy. Kalia let out a brief stiff chuckle, gritting her teeth as she tried to settle her thoughts. So there's no point in trying to uncover his intention? She muttered inwardly. Perhaps Alan truly meant it. Perhaps it really is best to visit Duke Altai, just as the great moon himself had advised. 2 years had passed since the children had been sent off on their individual paths. Inside his office, Alan asked calmly, Any new information? Preferably news about that kid. Ivan shook his head. Nothing about the children, Count. But there is something else. Alan glanced up, uninterested at first. Ivan continued, giving news that struck like lightning. Genonia County and the Altai Duchy have formed an alliance. Alan froze. What the hell did you just say? The two pillars of the underworld have united, even confirmed. On the surface, it appears harmless, but in the underworld, the alliance is confirmed. Alan dragged a hand down his face in pure frustration. I went through all that effort raising those little sinners, and now the world gives me a shadow alliance instead. Is the Astria kingdom going to collapse next? Exhaustion washed over him. A creeping fear followed. No way, she didn't. Kalia didn't actually take my words seriously that day, right? He remembered his cold suggestion. Visit Duke Altai. He certainly hadn't meant form an alliance with him. He slapped his forehead again. Come on, it has to be temporary. With Kalia's personality, cold, arrogant, hostile, it's impossible. But I should prepare. He picked up his pen to write a letter. Kalia, if I came off blunt, if I sounded cold, I was not intending to insult you. He stared at the line. This doesn't sound like an excuse at all. Still, he folded the letter and handed it to Yuan. Yuan, I'm leaving this to you. Yuan nodded. I'll deliver the message to Lady Genonia through the Machinery Guild. I'll continue searching for the children as well. Alan sank back, scanning several reports. I wonder what Randan and Sealrang are doing now. Even Yisha. His eyes landed on a blood-stained letter the two had sent after reaching their destination. Sairang wouldn't have died, right? The thought was dark, but it slipped out. He continued reading. If they followed the instructions and found the gift, they should have gained their warrior symbol. Maybe even escaped Baba Yaga by accident. Alan reviewed the note describing the ability of the gold-mounted beast's hand glove, the treasure he had given Sairang. That girl received something valuable. She wasn't born with the sin of pride. She could have become a strong warrior instead of a fallen sinner. He sighed. It was right there in the item description. If I had told her about the treasure's hidden value, she could have sold it or used it for funding. With her talent, she could have made a living anywhere. His gaze drifted toward the balcony and the stretching horizon beyond. After all, he murmured, this land is a place where anyone can seize the world through strength. Night draped the desert colony in a quiet, shimmering glow. Deep inside a hidden cave, Sairang stretched her arms with a tired yawn and waved her hand as she walked forward. At last, the ordeal is finally over, she murmured cheerfully. She lifted the golden hand glove, the treasure Alan, Great Moon, had given her. Oh, Great Moon, thank you, she whispered, eyes sparkling. This gift is incredible. Clutching the glove with affection, she thought of the pale gold kitten-like spirit that had appeared earlier. I always believed the essence of the Golden Mane tribe was just some random charm, she said. But what I heard as a child wasn't some fairy tale at all. Memories surfaced, her mother's gentle voice, the warmth of their old home, her tribe's forgotten pride. Our Lenjin are descendants of the Golden Mane tribe, her mother had once told her, kings of all beastkin. The essence of the Golden Mane tribe is a high relic passed down for hundreds of years. It grants us power and divine authority. Returning to the present, Sairang held her breath. And I found that very essence inside this desert cave. The moment she had put on the golden glove, pain had surged through her entire body. So real, so overwhelming. She had faced trial after trial inside her own consciousness, each challenge tearing at her mind. But she endured. Looking at her hand, she whispered, one day I nearly died as a test subject. Yet the Great Moon saved my life. The memory stung her heart. Abandoned, orphan, treated as nothing. But Alan had changed her fate. The power to take revenge on the Black Dragon. The monster who killed my parents, she said, voice trembling with emotion. She tightened her fist. Golden aura burst from her palm, flaring across the cave like sunlight tearing through darkness. I must repay the Great Moon's grace. Energy surged violently from her body, the golden essence blooming outward with force strong enough to shake dust from the walls. She stared at her glowing hand, amazed. This gift was never meant to make me an ordinary gladiator, she muttered. Not at all. Testing the glove's strength, she felt the awakened lineage roaring behind her blood. All I have to do is become the strongest gladiator alive, gather the scattered golden mane relics, and restore our tribe's glory. Golden light erupted again, brighter, fiercer, unstoppable. Raising her hand high, she declared with absolute resolve, I will slay the Black Dragon. Meanwhile, a few moments later, Sairang stepped out of the cave and looked up at the beautiful moon. With confidence, she said, all of this is for my savior. Let us begin. Excited, she continued. The Golden Man, who commands the greatest of all beastkind, The kings among their race shall rise again under the blue moon after 500 years. The scene now shifts to our protagonist. He's having his usual chat with Evan while flipping through some documents. Evan mentions that the Information Guild has managed to dig up some details about the children. Evan reveals that he was supposed to share this news a while ago, but it slipped his mind. Trying to keep it casual, our protagonist asks what the info is, and Evan reveals that Shulrong has been doing exceptionally well in the colony, even earning the nickname the Golden Flash. Evan feels like he's heard the name Golden Flash before, but it's just not coming to him. Regardless, he's just happy to hear that Shulrang is doing well. Evan points out that in that land, anyone can become anything, as long as they're strong. Kind of like the lawless city in Eminence in the Shadow. Curious, Evan asks if Evan has any updates on Radon, since he hasn't heard from him since arriving in the entertainment city of Raxus. Evan mentions that there's some info about Radon, but the Information Guild is still checking its accuracy. Upon hearing this, our MC calls Evan out, asking why he's just lounging around when he should be busy. Evan is puzzled, thinking he's done everything he was supposed to do, but Alan reminds him that he was supposed to start getting ready for their journey to the Magic Tower, something that's going to take at least a month. Hearing this, Evan is taken aback, exclaiming that he had no idea they were heading to the Magic Tower. Our boy wonders if he really forgot to mention it, but Evan, who's pretty used to these surprises, just lets out a sigh. He insists that a month seems excessive. Getting to the Green Magic Tower should only take about a week or so, but Alan clarifies that they're actually going to the Blue Magic Tower, asking if he's talking about the one near the Labyrinth City, which is quite a trek. Still, he reassures Alan that he'll get started on preparations right away. Left to his own thoughts, Alan starts to grumble about his own laziness. He can't believe he's going to be stuck in a carriage for an entire month. Just the thought of it is already wearing him out. Alan then reminds himself that he doesn't have a choice, especially since the item that can help with his tiny precious mana hole is waiting for him there. As he reminisces, he recalls the Labyrinth City and the fond memories it brings back from his gaming days. He used to spend countless hours grinding there. The labyrinth at the heart of the city is the iconic level grinding spot in Psychedelia. Players could snag better items by leveling up and delving deeper into the labyrinth. Yet despite the countless of players, no one ever made it to the end. It drove them crazy. Nobody could figure out why the developers kept adding floors when no one could reach that far. Some even resorted to cheat codes to hit floor 150, but the labyrinth just kept on going. Alan explains that just like in the game, relics and artifacts are always popping up in these labyrinths. Because of this, the role of official magic appraiser has skyrocketed in popularity, practically guaranteeing wealth for those lucky enough to land the job. And one such fortunate soul is none other than Rinna, the embodiment of greed. Our boy assumes that with her skills, she must have breezed through the appraiser exams. But as he reflects on it, he starts to wonder if the gift he picked out for her was a bit underwhelming compared to what the other kids got. After all, his gift is just an item that appraises other items. He even thinks about whether he should send her some extra support if his gift didn't quite cut it. But that's a dilemma for another day. In the maze-like city of Larthania, where the layout is as twisted as a real labyrinth, especially the houses, there's no one in charge. It's essentially a haven for explorers and mercenaries. If you wander past the countless shops in the southern part of town, you might stumble upon a hidden appraisal shop called Merde. This little gem has quietly made a name for itself, mainly serving nobles and rank explorers. Among its regulars is the Lord of Larthania, who is a customer there. The one running the shop is Rin. While she works, Rinna wears a mask to conceal her face. At the moment, she's just wrapped up appraising a magical item that ignites flames using mana for the Lord of Larthania. Rinna explains that the item can be imprinted, and when the Lord inquires about what she means by imprinted ability, she clarifies that with just a bit of mana, the flames will burn for an hour. This news delights the Lord as the item's efficiency has significantly improved. Imprinting essentially upgrades an item to the next level, and the specific imprinted ability varies based on the item. Once the customers leave, Rinna takes off her mask and spots a special item nearby. She picks it up, claiming it can be imprinted as well. She goes on to explain that the real reason her shop has gained such fame, even though it's tucked away in a corner, is because of this imprinting ability. According to her, it's a gift from their great moon. This is actually the item our boy gifted her, but Alan doesn't understand how it works well. He believes this special item can only appraise other items. But little does he know, it also has a hidden function that can upgrade items too. With a smile, Rinna recalls how when Alan first suggested she become an appraiser, she was completely baffled. Reflecting on her earlier misunderstanding, when she thought Alan was only a friend of Palin from the era of the Forgotten Outer Gods, she realizes that everything he's been doing was aimed at getting rid of the dark forces, those mysterious beings that took Deus's sister. But when she received the orders to go to the Labyrinth City and become a magic appraiser, she couldn't see how that would help in battling the dark forces. She was genuinely confused about why he sent her to a place like this, until she laid eyes on the gift he had given her. The item is called the Eye of the Stalker. It quickly identifies items that fall below a certain mana threshold. Essentially, it's like a handy assistant for appraising. But that was just the beginning. Its true potential was yet to be revealed. Rana, who was born with the ancient library, instantly recognized that this item was nowhere to be found in any records. When she broke its seal, its true imprint ability kicked in, allowing her to handle up to 500 items. As usual, Rina misinterpreted the situation, thinking our main character must have known everything, and gifted her the item to help her gain the strength needed to combat the dark entities. To fully awaken the item, she needs to offer 500 unique items as sacrifices. Right now, she's managed to sacrifice 248. With a mischievous grin, she thinks that only 252 more are needed before she can unleash the full power of this divine gift. However, the item only responds to specific high-tier relics. If she tries to sacrifice a low-tier relic, all her progress vanishes. That's why Rena has to appraise each relic before making a sacrifice. Then she starts acting a bit strange, hugging the item and declaring that their great master must have known she was the only one fit for this task, given her connection to the ancient library. It appears that Rina is also a Yandere, just like Utea. Rina insists that everything she does is for his grand will, and that it will all unfold according to the will of the Great Moon. 3 weeks later, our main character finally makes it to the Blue Magic Tower. Inside, he encounters the Vice Tower Master, a six-circle mage named Fenya Crescini. She's a petite woman with cat ears, who bluntly tells him to either state his business or get lost, leaving him a bit shocked by her rudeness. As he looks at her, he realizes she seems familiar. She was a key character in the Psychedelia game. At this point, she's still the Vice Master, since the main story hasn't kicked off yet. In the game, she was a prodigy who reached the legendary 8th Circle by the age of 20 and became the Master of the Blue Tower. He explains that magic towers aren't just powerful. They also control the production of vital goods, giving them a status comparable to that of nobles. Even though the Vice Tower Master has surpassed human limits, he can't shake off the feeling that her tone is way too disrespectful. He introduces himself as the Count of Palladio and mentions he's there to discuss the time gate, but Fenya completely brushes him off. He tells her that he's here to deal with the time gate. This time gate is a rift, leading to a mysterious subspace that pops up in areas with heavy magic use, causing all sorts of chaos and damage. Fenya, using her observation magic on him, can't help but mock him, asking what someone with such little talent thinks they can do about a time gate. She waves him away, telling him to scram. Our guy's left in total disbelief. Evan, who's supposed to have his back, is just standing there watching. When Alan presses for an answer, Fenya snaps back in irritation, saying that plenty of people have come before him, promising to close the time gate, but they all end up failing. He confidently insists he's being truthful, and all she needs to do is point him in the direction of the time gate. Inside, he's wondering why she has to be such a pain. He even feels a bit wronged by the whole situation. Fenya then mentions that she gets he needs something significant to sway public opinion, especially since people are starting to realize he became a count purely by chance after all his siblings passed away. With a surge of mana, she warns him that he can't just stroll into a magic tower acting all tough. This leaves our guy stunned as he wonders who's been spreading these rumors about him. It's been a few years since he did anything outrageous, and now people think he's gone soft, which, to be fair, is somewhat true but doesn't really matter. He also notices that even though Fenya seems like a total workaholic, she's surprisingly well informed about what's happening outside, and that's a bit intimidating. Panicking, our MC admits he was annoyed with her earlier. But after witnessing her magic, all that irritation just vanished. Evan leans in and whispers that if they try to take her on, they'll end up folded in half, so he should tread carefully. But desperate to prove himself, our boy strides over to Fenya and declares that if he can't eliminate the time gate as promised, he'll hand over all his property to the magic tower. Fenya thinks he's joking, but he insists he'll even swear an oath. This takes her by surprise and she agrees to guide him. When they arrive, she reminds him that, as promised, all his wealth will be hers if he fails. He confidently replies that there's no way that will happen. Fenya thinks this is the perfect opportunity to see what he's really made of, especially since everyone hails him as the leader of the underworld. Looking at his monohull, she figures he's just been lucky. While she admits he has an otherworldly presence, the reality is he has a tiny monohull and only slightly above average energy sensing, barely at the second circle. She can't help but wonder what he plans to do with such underwhelming skills. Meanwhile, Alan inwardly says that, honestly, there's no need to worry about closing the time gate. In just 3 months, it'll vanish on its own after releasing the relic he's after. That's where the research wraps up, and it seems no mage skilled enough to close the gate will show up. Yet the time gate at the Blue Magic Tower keeps causing chaos for over 2 years. As Alan starts using a Babylonia hand sign, Fenya can't help but tease him again, questioning why he's opting for hand gestures instead of a staff. She inwardly says that even ancient magic comes classified as a primal method. It's a method considered almost like a fairy tale. She then starts mocking him, telling him to stop imitating the signs and leave already. But Alan begins to cast, and suddenly everything goes eerily quiet. Fenya finds herself frozen. She can't move. Using her observation magic, she scans him and is taken aback to see him defying the laws of the world as a gigantic eye materializes in the sky. When it opens, Fenya feels a shiver run down her as she witnesses it. She tries to understand what's happening, but then she gulps as she realizes that she shouldn't try to understand what's going on, as it will be dangerous to try. The ominous eye stares at her and reaches its hand towards her. Fenya also reaches out to it hesitantly. Then she hears the words, "absolute demand," and she starts sweating bullets. With fear, she mutters that she understands the demand. The eye stares at her one last time, and then closes. Time starts to gradually return to normal as the ominous entity disappears away due to Alan successfully closing the time gate using his mysterious power. He casually turns to her and states that the gate is closed. She flinches by this. Alan holds the relic thinking that it was easy. All he had needed are special items and methods. He tells Fenya that he'll be taking the relic that this time gate coughed up. He inwardly says that he needs to use it a few more times, so he used a convincing spell on her. Fenya remains in a thoughtful position, and Alan wonders whether she fell for it. Then we get to see her distraught face as she stutters that she understood and won't tell anyone. Alan misunderstands that her face shows that his bluff failed. He then approaches her, saying that he appreciates it. But then his words are cut off as he sees her stumbling backwards. Fenya quickly mutters that she understood, and that she'll keep absolute silent about what she saw and won't tell anyone. She further adds that she can keep a secret well, and to trust her. Seeing this, our boy wonders what has gotten into her to act like this suddenly, because just a moment ago she was all bitchy. Alan then walks out towards Evan and instructs him to prepare to head out. But right at that moment, Fenya tells him to wait. She, all sweaty, shows a case filled with valuable recovery potions that she made. She pleads him to take it. Alan inspects it and inwardly notes that these potions made by the Vice Tower Lord is top grade 1. Fenya nervously asks if he likes it, but he stays lost in thought, thinking, 2 bottles cost the price of several lower ranks. I looked it up and almost choked when I saw the price. Is she that thankful for me closing the gate? But Fenya trembled, saying that she will absolutely keep silent, as he requested. She also states that she'll make a mana oath for it. Alan and Evan watch in confusion, wondering why a mere thing like this requires an oath. But then Alan realizes that she seems to have misunderstood what he said. But it was too late. She performed the mana oath, sealing her promise of not revealing what she saw. Fenya proudly states that now he can believe that she keeps her promises well. Alan awkwardly says that he sees, and inwardly thinks that she shows no sign of clearing up the misunderstanding. And so, at the Blue Magic Tower, Alan acquired the relic he wanted, along with 5 bottles of potion and an oath. As their carriage departed, Evan observes the relic on Alan's wrist and asks, "Is that the treasure that came out of the gate? It was difficult to get, but it looks more primitive than I expected. Is the performance good?" Alan holds the relic and states that it's something he absolutely needed. He stares at it, thinking, seal of the unholy one. I'm glad I got it safely. The gem embedded in the bracelet can absorb and store mana from the atmosphere. It's working well. The storage capacity isn't huge, but it's more than enough for my mana hole. Then he looks out the carriage with a displeased look, thinking that his body has less mana than a support item. But then he shrugs it off because his goal is magical research and self-preservation, not fighting. So this is enough for him. Meanwhile, Evan just stares at our boy, who is nodding to himself. Alan then wonders, what did Fenya misunderstand? Because she was suddenly polite. We get a flashback of Fenya bowing a lot to Alan and waiting for him to depart. Alan then says to her, just to be clear, I am a second circle mage. Fenya anxiously gives a thumbs up, saying, I know, you look exactly like second circle mage. Alan misinterprets it and wonders if she's mocking him. Now at the present, he recalls that it was a similar reaction to Kalia last time. She had also reacted the same way as Fenya. This makes him feel uneasy. Anyway, he shrugs it off, thinking that this doesn't matter, since he won't be seeing them again anyway. So it's all fine for him. He then tells Evan that the weather is great, and he affirms that it's peaceful. The scene now shifts to Duke Altea's mansion. She holds a cup of tea and calmly says, it's been a while. I hope you'll have a comfortable stay, young lady Zenonia. Kalia smiles, saying, of course, Altea. You haven't changed either. I'm honestly just happy to see you. Altea remarks that it's convenient, that they don't need to discuss class or authority among themselves. Kalia agrees that Count Palladio's foresight is astonishing once again. She recalls what he had said to her that fateful day. She inwardly says upon following his advice, I quickly understand his true intention. While chatting, they both realize they were both inferior to Palladio. Regardless of the reason, it was an alliance built on Count Palladio's command. Since a power struggle is meaningless beneath the absolute number one, Zenonia and Altea became more comfortable allies. Altea curiously asks why she visited today, since the conference is next month. Kalia hands her a letter saying, the Count sent a letter during the day I visited as an excuse. Lauria opens it, wondering what it could be. The letter reads, young lady Zenonia, I hope you are well. Regarding your visit the other day, a few nobles have grumbled to me about it as well. Therefore, there are not many nobles that suit me. So please understand. Altea is confused, wondering that this is just about the conversation of noble families. Kalia remarks that it seems like a normal apology letter, but Altea then adds in that there must be some kind of scheme hidden within. Kalia smiles and affirms, stating that they need to discuss it together. They both read the sentence again. There are not many nobles that suit me. They both check the noble's background, saying, Baron Cania belongs to the noble faction, and Marquis Maranchino is one of the key figures in the royal faction. Viscount Belanda belongs to the royal faction. Duke Faldian is a key figure in the noble faction. Among the nobles he was speaking to at the ball, they both finally come to a conclusion. In short, Alan doesn't like either the noble faction or the royal faction, so they should kill them all. Altea then states that they should draw a conclusion based on common sense, and Kalia agrees to it. Then they both mutter that he wants to push out the existing nobles and create a new regime. Lauria then looks up, thinking that this is the reason Alan made her the Duke of Altea, so he could use that fame to influence. She mutters that if the hegemon of the West is with him, then certainly victory is near, and no force can stand in his path. Kalia remarks that it seems that way. Then they both decide what move they should make. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Blue Magic Tower. The Tower Lord, in surprise, asks if she's saying that Count Palladio resembles the gate. Trinia slumps onto the table and affirms. The Tower Lord then asks for a detailed explanation. Fenya lets out a sigh, and so the puzzle pieces were randomly being created, running wild and sitting into place. Then the scene shifts, and we see Alan nearly choking. Evan asks if he's all right, to which he says that he's suddenly choked because of the sweet potato, though he remarks that it's still delicious. Evan offers him water, and Alan thanks him. He drinks the water and mutters that he wants to go home quickly. He also wonders that it's about time Utea's letter arrived. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Holy Kingdom, Rosario. We see a woman standing in front of the statue of Rosario. She smiles, and it is revealed that it's none other than Utea, who is wearing a saint uniform and is looking stunning. After shifting into the Mage Tower area, an elderly man appeared quietly. "Oh, my disciple, I am back. He looked around trying to sense a familiar presence. His brow slowly furrowed. I can no longer feel the time gate. What is going on here? This man was the tower master of the Blue Magic Tower, an 8th circle mage. Salim Microdot. A faint sense of unease rose within him. Did something go wrong while I was away? Inside the tower, the wise tower master was in terrible condition. Extreme exhaustion weighed down her body, and her face looked pale and lifeless, almost like a corpse. She stood silently, staring at the deck beneath her feet. When she noticed his presence, her eyes widened slightly. "Master, you're really back," she said weakly. "I've completed the task you entrusted to me." Salim was startled. "What?" He stepped forward. "What happened to you?" Before he could react further, her legs gave out, and she collapsed into his arms. His expression stiffened. "Did something serious happen? She isn't arguing with me like she usually does." He carefully supported her, his gaze turning cautious. Lena became the wise tower master at a very young age due to her exceptional talent. Her arrogance and sharp tongue were notorious. Some even said she had reduced rookie mages to tears more than once. She was undeniably gifted, but difficult to deal with. I never tried to correct her personality, Celine thought. A genius mage realizes the limits of their achievements upon reaching the 7th circle. Humility comes naturally after that. But this situation is strange. He snapped his head up and spoke again. "Why didn't you tell me earlier? My trip to the north lasted far longer than expected. Were you overwhelmed managing everything alone?" At his words, Lena suddenly lifted her head. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at him. Then she let out a long, shaky sigh. She explained everything. The situation surrounding the magic gate and the man named Alan. "The gate couldn't be closed," she said quietly. "That man was involved." Salim's gaze sharpened. "You can't explain the exact reason, can you? You made an oath?" His voice hardened. "Why would you swear an oath to a mere count?" "There was no need." Lena trembled slightly. "There isn't much I can say in detail," she replied softly. "That's all I'm allowed to explain." Salim exhaled slowly, then lightly patted her shoulder. "So that's what finally made you modest," he said calmly. "An incomprehensible mage. Or perhaps," his eyes widened faintly, "an origin mage." Lena nodded weakly. "The man named Alan possesses the power of an origin mage." Salim raised his hand and lightly tapped his disciple on the head. She was so shocked that she did not even try to brush his hand away. Salim then lifted his gaze toward the distance and spoke calmly. "The Count Palatine of the Astrea Kingdom." Quite interesting. 1 month later, after returning from the Blue Magic Tower, Alan continued immersing himself in magical experiments. While organizing his research, Silas spoke in a thoughtful tone. "After obtaining the mark of corruption, I began researching phrases seriously. Since I can now use more mana per day, my progress has increased." Alan carefully wrote down his theories. "The key lies in the rules governing phrases," he said quietly. "If the conditions are not met, the magic collapses. Phrases that do not match the spell should never be used." He added another note. "Identical effects cannot be repeated. Only 4 components can be used at once. Similar phrases overlap, creating interference." After a brief pause, he continued writing. "Some phrases require proper arrangement, almost like guidance. I believe I've discovered a new rule related to phrase usage." He glanced at the page and spoke casually. "It might be connected to how magic aligns with the laws of nature, or perhaps where I place those laws. I'm not entirely sure yet." At that moment, Yuan arrived. "My lord, what's going on here?" Yuan asked, scanning the surroundings. "Your magic grows stronger every time I witness it." "Count," Alan exhaled lightly. "I suppose so." Wen frowned in disbelief. "This doesn't feel like second circle magic anymore. It's on a completely different level compared to a few months ago." Alan gestured toward the massive crater carved into the ground. "An ordinary gravity spell wouldn't create something like this." Yen stared at the deep pit. "Did you really do this with gravity magic?" Alan nodded. "Even at maximum output, a second circle mage shouldn't be able to crush something to this extent." Wen looked at him with wide eyes. "Master, that's insane." Alan smiled faintly. "I thought I was getting stronger, but perhaps it isn't just an illusion." Wen let out a slow sigh. "Your magic truly is fascinating, Count. Why don't you believe in yourself more?" Alan shook his head. "If the power increase were obvious, it wouldn't be due to proficiency or phrases alone," he explained calmly. "On the first day I worked with mud to shape basic constructs. On the second day, I refined my crafting techniques. On the third day, this result appeared. He looked at the crater again. Improved magical proficiency means greater precision and deeper understanding. I followed those 3 days as stages for developing gravity magic. Alan hesitated slightly before adding, phrases function more like trigger words. They activate attributes rather than define the spell itself. Lowering his voice, he continued, I spent months studying phrase arrays related to gravity. Recently, I've been using nearly identical phrases with slight alterations. Yuen listened in silence, his expression filled with awe, standing before the board like a true researcher. Alan continued his explanation. He pointed at the diagrams he had drawn. Phrase array research chart, he said calmly. I discovered that the power only increases gradually as I fine-tune the optimal arrangement. He then looked up at Yuen, his brows slightly furrowed. It has to be an illusion. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. There's no reason for a spell's firepower to increase so suddenly. Alan paused for a moment before adding, maybe I'm simply in better condition these days. Yuen blinked in surprise. Is that so? He then reached into his coat. I came to deliver this. A letter just arrived. Alan's eyes lit up. Thanks, Yuen. I'll go back to my room and read it properly. You're heading back already? Yuen asked. Alan nodded. Yeah. I've already used all 3 spellcasts I'm allowed for today. Back in his room, Alan opened his notebook and carefully unfolded the letter. His gaze sharpened as he read, a reason for my magic suddenly becoming stronger. He muttered, could this be a reward tied to a curse? A faint heaviness settled over his expression. A curse, an Eastern ritual where the caster sacrifices themselves to inflict misfortune upon another, or even upon themselves. Once afflicted, the target suffers a loss but gains a compensatory benefit in return. Alan shook his head. There's no one from the East around me, he said quietly. So it can't be that. Returning to the present moment, he closed the notebook and stood up. Then maybe, he murmured while walking inside. It's the result of receiving faith. Alan suddenly stopped mid-thought. Account of a small kingdom, one the underworld barely acknowledges. He muttered. He let out a quiet sigh. That doesn't make sense at all. After a moment, he shook his head. Well, sometimes you just have to let things go and keep living, Alan said to himself. Nothing bad will come of it, right? Holy Kingdom of Rosrio. Capital city, Roenal. Roenal was a massive, radiant city bathed in the divine light. Pure white structures stretched endlessly, forming a sacred landscape where the people worshipped the goddess of the moon and peace, Shrionia. Inside the eastern prayer hall, Utea stood firmly before the statue of the goddess, her posture dignified and calm. Footsteps echoed behind her. Greetings, sister. Utea turned her head. The knight who had arrived could not help but pause. Her appearance was breathtaking, serene, refined, and quietly overwhelming. And to you, Sir Loki, Utea replied gently. Have you been well? Loki narrowed his eyes slightly. She's merely a nun, he thought, lower in rank than a paladin, not even bearing the mark of holy grace. And yet, I must show her respect. He stepped forward and bowed deeply. Yes, he said solemnly. We managed to save 8 children and 25 villagers from a small settlement between the eastern and western regions. It was all thanks to you, sister. Utea smiled softly. Not at all, she replied. You were the one who carried out those deeds, and you were the one who guided someone as ignorant as me. Loki clenched his fist. I will always be grateful, he said quietly. For 20 years I lived in despair. I couldn't feel divine power, not even the trace. I was on the verge of giving up. His vision blurred as memory surfaced. He remembered himself sitting alone on the cold floor, broken and hollow. Then Utea appeared. If there's something you desire that deeply, she had said softly, why not try placing your faith in the moon? Her smile back then had been faint yet unsettling. A plan had already been forming in her mind. The moon, Loki had whispered. Utea's crimson eyes gleamed as she looked at him, her voice cold and calm. You'll understand, she said, once you truly walk that path. Loki's gaze hardened as his thoughts drifted inward. I was so desperate that I was willing to do anything. As she instructed, he prayed to the moon for several days. Then the change came suddenly. His energy surged at an astonishing pace. Divine power flowed into his sword, and almost instinctively, he learned how to wield it. The sensation was overwhelming, pure, powerful, undeniable. He had been ecstatic, but that joy was short-lived. A moment of temptation followed and despair crept into his heart. I placed my faith in the moon, not in goddess Coronia, he muttered sharply. Fear tightened his chest. Have I stepped onto the path of heresy? Yet power borrowed from the gods was still divine power. Even the sacred artifacts engraved with the name of goddess Caronia responded to him. The charm in his possession and the bracelet around his wrist glowed faintly, filled with holy energy. Loki let out a bitter smile. That alone proved the legitimacy of the divine power he possessed. Returning to the present, he lifted his head and looked at Utea. "Why did you tell me to believe in the moon?" he asked. Utea smiled gently, her voice calm and reassuring. "Because faith is born from belief in what cannot be seen," she said, "and such belief takes time to manifest." Her smile deepened. "It is always easier to obtain what you seek from something that already exists." Then her tone sharpened. "The moon will always be with you. Everything you know, everything you perceive, originates from it." She spoke with certainty, hiding the true intentions forming quietly behind her eyes. The moon carried a meaning far deeper than Loki realized, one that felt unsettling in this moment. Utea raised her hand, gesturing toward the sky above. Loki's eyes widened. "I see," he said softly. "The goddess herself is the moon. This allows even doubtful humans to believe with certainty." He lowered his head and bowed deeply. "Sister Utea," he said with sincerity, "thank you. From the bottom of my heart." Utea tilted her head slightly. "If you wish to express your gratitude?" A sharp, almost wicked smile curved her lips. "Shall we pray together?" Loki answered without hesitation. "I would gladly do so, as many times as needed." She nodded calmly. "You arrived just in time. Many have already gathered for prayer." Inside the prayer hall, the atmosphere was solemn and heavy with reverence. Utea walked forward, her footsteps echoing softly as she ascended the elevated platform. The gathered believers lowered their heads at her presence. Standing at the highest point, she raised her hands. "Now then," she declared, "let us pray to the great moon." At that moment, she stood as Utea Bludia, sister of the Holy Kingdom of Rosario.
Meanwhile, Alan sat in his office reading the letter that detailed the latest updates. There was nothing special about it. After finishing, he let out a deep sigh and lowered his head onto the desk. Fate meant that everyone was doing well. Of course, that was good news. Still, a quiet loneliness crept in. Other than Utea, he had not received a single letter from anyone. A sense of despair surfaced as he reflected on it. From their perspective, it was understandable. They had never even seen his face. To them, he was merely a benefactor. No, perhaps just someone who had helped them once and then faded into the background. Alan lifted his head, his eyes narrowing slightly. In the end, he had already achieved his goal. He had guided them onto the right path and ensured they would not become those who destroyed the world. There was no reason to feel hurt, yet deep inside his mind a silent truth remained. Nothing. No one. Alan let out a quiet sigh. Utea must have been busy, yet she still made sure to send him a letter every month. Perhaps he was overthinking it. Even so, a tight ache formed in his chest. No other child had written to him. That realization hurt more than he expected. More than anything, he wanted to know how Utea was doing now, what she was occupied with, and whether she was safe. Tears welled up before he could stop them. After raising 5 children, was it possible that the eldest was the only one who truly appreciated his efforts? Alan clenched his hand and forced himself to calm down. "I'm fine," he murmured to himself. Just then, "Count, are you busy?" Alan stiffened in shock and looked up. "You scared me." He coughed lightly, regaining his composure, then glanced toward the door. "You're still here?" Yuen stood straight and replied calmly. "Of course," he continued. "I received some information about the children from the Information Guild. I thought it would be best to report it to you immediately." Alan's eyes sharpened. "Oh, what is it about?" Yuen answered without hesitation. "It's about Raiden, the one you asked me to keep an eye on last time." Alan was momentarily confused, but he did not voice it. He had asked Yuen to gather information, so this was not unexpected. Still, the report caught him off guard. "What is it?" Alan asked, leaning forward. "Tell me everything, from start to finish." Yuen nodded and began his explanation. "First of all, Xiaoran and Deus are the ones causing the most commotion." He continued calmly, laying out the details. Xiaoran had already secured 32 consecutive victories out of the 100 required to challenge Baba Yanga. Alan froze. 32 wins in a row? He frowned. "Wait, the fighter with the highest streak isn't." "The Lion King," Yuen interrupted. 41 consecutive victories. Alan fell silent for a moment. Then realization struck him. The Lion King was that broken character who temporarily joined the player's party in the game. "So that place really is filled with monsters," Alan muttered under his breath. They rely on fighters for military strength. A nervous sigh escaped him. Shaoran was already nearing the peak of that hierarchy. The growth was unnatural, far too fast. What exactly is going on there? Alan murmured. Something must be driving this. Yuen let out a restrained sigh before continuing. As for Deus and the Night Order, reports confirm they eliminated one of the 8 barbarian chiefs. Alan's eyes sharpened. Karuta of the Snowfield, Yuen said. The battle was decisive. Deus personally took the barbarian's life and secured the victory. The image formed in Alan's mind was unsettling. Deus's growth was no longer subtle. It was terrifying. So you're saying they've become monsters, Alan said quietly. Superhumans forged through rituals. He let out a slow breath. I know them far too well. In the game, he had fought the barbarians countless times and even faced their god. Just recalling it made his temples ache. At least that nightmare only began after the 5 great sins descended. Dealing with that had been nothing but trouble. I suppose I don't need to worry about Deus anymore, Alan said at last. Yuan responded immediately. Because of this achievement, he's now being treated on the same level as the first sword, Reinhardt. Alan sighed. Should I have gone to see them in person? He murmured. If I had, things might have felt different. I was genuinely considering a visit. Yuan continued. As for Reinhardt, who has since become an appraiser, he's said to be able to apply black imprints that enhance the power of artifacts. He explained the process briefly, his tone carrying a hint of excitement. Isn't that interesting? Alan gave a faint smile. If things keep going well, I'd like to see it myself. Then his expression hardened. What about Raiden? He asked. Did he truly become a pirate? Yuan's gaze sharpened. That's the main issue, Alan frowned. You're serious? You've heard of the 7 April leaks in the Sea of Rak? Yuan said. The regions where the great pirates gather. He paused before delivering the report. Raiden has become the captain of the largest among them. The first April leak? What? Alan shouted. The strength left his body and he nearly collapsed back into his chair. Disbelief flooded his mind. Impossible. He had sponsored that child for an entire year. All he wanted was for him to grow up happily and live a normal life. And now, piracy. Was this some kind of joke? Even the so-called prince-maker scenarios were not this absurd. A ridiculous meme he once laughed at online had turned into his reality. Alan covered his face, his shoulders trembling. Then he snapped his head up. A pirate, he said hoarsely. That's not why I sent him to Rax in the first place, Yuan explained calmly. Raiden possessed exceptional sensory abilities, making him adept at detecting enemies. As a member of the sea god race, a rarity on the continent, the sea was his natural domain. There are countless rare artifacts hidden in the Sea of Rax, Yuan continued. You recommended the path of a treasure hunter. It was a promising career. You even gave him a specialized item to enhance his sensing ability. Alan clenched his jaw. And yet, he muttered, he still chose piracy. His voice dropped, heavy with frustration. What a mess. Yuan hesitated, then added, Still, my lord, if he truly became a great pirate and rose to the position of captain, then he's essentially the ruler of that sea. By all accounts, he's a major figure now. Alan did not look pleased, I suppose, he replied flatly. Inside his mind, doubt spiraled. How did Raiden even manage to take down the former captain of the first Apsar Leaguer? Those captains were all superhuman beings, monsters of the sea. The pirates of the 7th Apsar Leaguer were said to be invincible in naval combat. A sudden thought struck him. Did he obtain one of the most broken artifacts from the old era? Alan had spent an absurd amount of time grinding the treasure hunter minigame just to acquire top-tier equipment. Was Raiden's rise truly the result of overwhelming item power? He released a long sigh. I know the world never follows plans perfectly, Alan murmured. But this feels strangely bitter. For a moment, it felt as if his soul had left his body. Alan slumped back into his chair, staring blankly ahead. So this is how a father feels, he said quietly. After trying so hard for his child count, Yuan said at once, concern in his voice. Are you all right? What's wrong? Before Alan could respond, at the heart of the chiefdom of Korkia lay the great maritime city Rex. A breathtaking island stood proudly against the endless sea, its beauty unmatched. Beyond its shores rested the domain feared and revered by sailors alike, the 7 pirate paradises. Among them, the largest and most glorious was the first Apsar Leaguer. This was a land once ruled by a captain who had offered sacrifice and received the blessing of kingship. That era ended with the fall of the great pirate known as Red Slayer, El Sidra, who had dominated these waters for years. Now the banner of the first Apsar Leaguer flew under a new name, Raiden. He stood upright at the edge of the deck, gazing toward the horizon, his expression calm yet distant. "I still can't wrap my head around the great moon," Raiden muttered. "What exactly is it?" At first he had not cared. He never gave it much thought. To him, Alan had merely been a benefactor, a noble who gave him a chance at life. Without that intervention, he would have died as a slave, reduced to material for biological experiment. Raiden clenched his hand slightly. "Honestly, my time in the Blue Moon felt less like devotion," he admitted quietly, "and more like I was simply following Yusha." The sea breeze brushed past him as his thoughts drifted deeper, tangled between gratitude, confusion, and a future he had never planned to claim. Raiden frowned as a thought surfaced. So when will a direct order finally come from the Great Moon? If it was truly a command, then why did it feel so distant, so unclear? He recalled the letter he had read earlier. At that moment, a sense of doubt had crept in. Was there ever any meaning in becoming a treasure hunter? Instead of motivation, he felt a vague repulsion toward the idea. There were too many people he needed to take revenge on, immediately. His gaze darkened as memories resurfaced. On a nameless island, his tribe had lived quietly, peacefully. Then those black-clad figures arrived. Without reason or mercy, they slaughtered everyone. The screams, the blood, the suffering, it never left his mind. Later on the continent, he barely managed to escape to. The nightmare continued. Hunters tracked them down. In front of his eyes, his exhausted parents were killed without hesitation. Those bastards! After that, he was sold off as a slave. Raiden clenched his fist. Becoming a treasure hunter, receiving that so-called gift, none of it had anything to do with the revenge he had sworn. None of it brought his parents back. He lifted his head and looked toward his island. "For now, I'll pretend to follow orders." A sudden noise pulled him from his thoughts. What's all that commotion? He turned slightly. Pirates nearby were laughing loudly, enjoying their food and drink. One of them raised his head, lit his cigar, and spoke with excitement. "Only the chosen ones can receive the heavenly king's blessing through sacrifice. Every captain of the 7 Apsar Leaguer who survives becomes eternal." Raiden froze. His eyes sharpened as he slowly turned toward the speaker, killing intent flooding his gaze. "The ones who killed my parents. The 7 pirates." His expression grew terrifyingly dark. "So they actually managed to get their hands on a king?" he thought grimly. "And now they're nonsense. The so-called heavenly king's power was not some miracle. It was a blasphemy. That power could only be granted by the sea god Clyde. It required a scarred ritual, one that used the body of a member of the sea god race. That power was never meant for outsiders. It belonged to his tribe, to his family, and every single captain of the 7 Apsar Leaguer was using it." Raiden's breathing grew heavy as rage surged through him. Those hunters, he thought, teeth clenched. "They split my parents apart for this." His hand tightened, veins bulging. "I'll destroy them," Raiden vowed silently. Every last pirate. A chilling darkness surged through his body. Under the midnight moon, Raiden stood atop a high hill, overlooking the distant celebration of his enemies. His gaze was dark and heavy. "How did they know?" Raiden muttered under his breath. "I never told anyone my story." A cold realization settled in his heart. It felt as if the great moon itself had prepared this opportunity, an opening for revenge, arranged to fulfill a long-standing promise. His eyes remained locked on the ship below. There among his enemies, Raiden clenched his fists tightly, rage boiling beneath the surface. "I can't take revenge yet," he said in a low voice. "There are superhumans who wield the power of the sea god." His eyes narrowed. As his thoughts aligned, his gaze shifted to the pendant hanging against his chest. In the next moment, its glow flared sharply. "If all of this was truly intentional," Raiden murmured, "then there must be a reason the great moon gave me this gift as well." He lowered his head slightly, staring at the pendant with unmistakable reverence. Admiration filled his expression as he offered silent worship. "This will be the foundation of my revenge," he said firmly. The scene shifted to morning. Without hesitation, Raiden leapt from the peak of the cliff, plunging deep into the sea below. A sharp light flashed across his eyes as the pendant activated. "The great moon's gift, the Amrita goggles," Raiden said calmly. "They make it easy to locate artifacts hidden deep within the ocean." His gaze pierced through the dark waters. The artifacts I found were more than enough to compensate for my lack of strength. The moment Raiden discovered the treasury box, its surface gleaming faintly. He opened it. Inside was a golden bracelet. He took it out and fastened it around his ankle. "To think I only offered a simple thank you," Raiden said quietly. "How foolish of me." The seaside was breathtaking. Raiden lifted his gaze toward the moon, its light reflecting across the water. "The great moon kept its promise," he said. "Not only did you bring the target of my revenge directly before me, but you even granted me the power to carry it out, the power that truly belongs to my tribe." A trace of understanding appeared in his eyes. "I finally understand the command you sent in that letter." A faint smile formed on his lips. "Your true intention was never just revenge," Raiden continued. "It was to help me seize control of the 7 predators." He lifted his head slightly. Under the moonlight, his posture was composed and confident, his presence striking. "I was right," he said calmly. "I won't forget anything." His thoughts drifted to Utea. "That woman is truly a genius," Raiden muttered. "And terrifying as well." He exhaled softly. "That day marked the beginning," he said. "What once felt like an unbearable sentence has slowly become a source of trust." He sighed, his voice low. "Everything has been engraved deep into my heart." Raiden's eyes sharpened as he silently spoke a vow to the great moon. He turned back, gazing at the vast sea beneath the moonlight, immersed in the breathtaking scenery. Raiden looked up. 3 months later, the oppressive heat had faded, and autumn had arrived. It was the most beautiful season in Benel, Estria, the time of the grand social gathering. Inside a moving carriage, Alan sat stiffly, his expression tense. "I was forced to tag along," he said with clear displeasure. "Once every 4 years, mandatory attendance. I truly hate this ridiculous event." His mood darkened at the thought of the banquet ahead. The carriage moved swiftly along the road. "Lord," UN reported, "the carriages from the Cartelad and Adran families have joined us as planned." "All right," Alan replied. Inside, he understood the reason. Traveling in a large group reduced the risk of bandit attacks. Even so, the frustration remained. What a strange and annoying culture. Alan let out a quiet sigh. Only then did he realize how tense he had been that evening. When he reached the gathering hall, 2 men were already speaking nearby. "Count, honestly, even a single guard is more than enough," one of them said. The other replied with a mocking tone. "Ever since you accidentally inherited the title, your treasury must be in trouble." The atmosphere made Alan feel suffocated and irritated. "For me, the problem isn't bandits," Alan thought coldly. "It's that bastard, Brad Nobles." The 2 men kept hovering close, their behavior oily and unpleasant, smiling excessively as if trying to curry favor. One of them even licked his lips in an exaggerated manner. Alan felt increasingly uncomfortable. He lowered his head toward his plate, hiding his expression, and muttered irritably, "These guys spread poison with their words, then immediately run off to gossip behind my back." It wasn't surprising. The Palladio family had long been notorious, a scoundrel faction that once dominated the western and eastern underworlds. Their power had been built on enormous wealth, all scraped from the darkest depths. "But I'm satisfied with my current life," Alan thought calmly. "I've already washed my hands of the underworld." It wasn't as if he had any trouble living peacefully now. "Besides," he continued inwardly, "that world is far too dangerous. Yet some wolves never stop barking." Because of that, the eastern underworld had recently become a target for bottom feeders. Nobles and the so-called predators were always standing at the forefront, stirring chaos. And then there's that rumor, Alan thought with mild irritation, that I only became a count because of luck. As expected, it fueled jealousy among the nobles. He knew very well that the rumor about him being the mastermind behind the kingdom had long since faded, downgraded into nothing more than the tale of a lucky beneficiary. At that moment, one of the nobles exclaimed dramatically, "Oh dear, Count, how unfortunate that you're so short on funds." Another chimed in with a fake smile. "You know, I could help you anytime if you just ask." Alan's patience thinned. "Aren't you both a little too old to be acting this pitiful?" he said bluntly. "I didn't expect you to mock me right to my face." His gaze sharpened. "These jerks are really crossing the line," he thought. "I see," Alan continued inwardly. "It's time for the Palladio Victim Association. The Cartelade and Adran families, once bullied endlessly by Palladio, were now venting all the resentment they had bottled up for years." Alan looked at the 2 men coldly. "Now they're using me as an outlet," he thought, suppressing his irritation. Trying to regain control in their own twisted way, The image of their smug expressions made his stomach churn. "What a bunch of filthy dogs," Alan muttered inwardly. "It's not like I was the one who bullied them in the first place." Alan spoke with a faint mocking smile. "I feel like I'm dealing with some internet dog shit trolls." Yuan glanced at the two nobles in surprise, then nodded slightly. "Those jerks, you're right, my lord. I have to give you credit." Alan ignored the troublemakers entirely. "I won't respond," he said calmly. "Ignoring them completely is the best revenge." He then lifted his head and looked at Yuan. "Where have you been?" "They were handing this out in the kitchen." Yuan replied, holding up a plate. "You should try it. The roasted prawns are excellent." Alan glanced over and raised his brows slightly. "They look good," he said. "Very tempting." The two of them began eating together. "Root vegetables are always the best," Alan remarked, "especially on a chilly evening like this." Before Yuan could reply, the nobles spoke again. "I suppose all those underworld troops vanished because you couldn't manage them," one sneered. Another added mockingly, "It seems you can't even take proper care of your own carriage." Alan didn't even look at them. He continued eating his prawns without pause. "Listening to them," he said casually, "it's starting to sound like mosquitoes buzzing." The two nobles raised their voices. Clearly irritated, Alan simply took another bite. "Still tasty," he commented. Yuan nodded thoughtfully. "It would be even better with butter, my lord. You should try it next time." Their quiet conversation continued as the background noise faded. The scene shifted smoothly. Far to the north lay an endless land of freezing cold, a desolate expanse swallowed by snow and wind. The air itself felt lifeless, though all warmth had been stripped away. Barbarians lay scattered across the pale ground, collapsed and motionless, their bodies resembling frozen corpses. One man still struggled weakly. His gaze was dark, filled with pain and rage as he whispered through clenched teeth, "Those damn Caliban brats. They know nothing of honor." He was one of the 8 great Kulkan, a barbarian chief who worshipped battle itself. He recalled Samu's earlier words. They had expected a fair clash, a glorious confrontation. Instead, what lay before him was nothing but slaughtered bodies. For a Kulkan, combat was sacred, honorable, and magnificent. But this defeat, it was the result of a cowardly surprise attack. "This war is unjustified," he whispered, honored. Blood spilled from his mouth as he remembered the betrayal. The moment someone struck from behind, luring him into a trap under the guise of a duel proposed by a Caliban knight. Kulkan coughed violent, his body finally giving way as he collapsed onto the frozen ground. "What happened to Garuna of the snowfield?" he murmured painfully. His eyes shifted to the side, where a lifeless body lay motionless. A deep bitterness surfaced. "Garuna, I have met an end so shameful," the chief whispered, "one that won't even allow me to close my eyes in peace." Suddenly, the surrounding area darkened unnaturally, as if the light itself had been swallowed. A demonic voice echoed sharply through the frozen land. "Call my name!" Kulkan nearby cried out, blood and tears spilling together. Yet the dark voice did not stop. "Call for me," it whispered again. "Call upon my great name, the name you all worship." At that moment, the barbarian chief's breath finally faded. With his last strength, he exhaled a single name. The god of this world, Altaz. In the next instant, his body twitched. The barbarian chief slammed his palm into the frozen ground, forcing himself upright through sheer will. "Great God, Altaz," he gasped. He raised his head with trembling resolve. "We dare to call upon your honorable name, my lord." The air distorted. A figure slowly emerged from the darkness, mysterious and terrifying. White hair flowed down his back, and his body shimmered with a blue universe-like hue, resembling an otherworldly elf. His face carried a demonic sharpness, and his eyes glowed with insatiable hunger. The figure snapped his fingers sharply. "Yes," he said coldly. "Do that." His gaze pierced straight through the barbarian chief. "And I shall grant your heart's desire." Meanwhile, the scene unfolded from Alan's perspective as he moved through the banquet hall. His posture remained calm and dignified, carrying himself with the restraint expected of a noble. Even as he headed toward the social gathering, the uneasy coexistence around him continued. Other noble houses joined in the ridicule, their attitude unchanged. 2 parasitic nobles lingered nearby, openly mocking him. One sneered that Alan looked like someone greedily devouring prawns, then casually placed a beer bottle on top of his head, clicking his tongue in false pity. Alan did not react. He ignored them completely, maintaining the composure of a true noble. In his mind, however, Alan calmly assessed the situation. To him, they were nothing more than fish already caught in a net, unaware that the fishermen had long since tightened the line. Night gradually descended, and the nobles settled in to rest. Yuen enjoyed his meal without concern, while Alan continued to disregard the two men. The pair, on the other hand, twisted their expressions in frustration. Damn it! That brat from the Palladio line is completely ignoring us. This is absurd, one of them thought bitterly. The other leaned closer and whispered, "So what about the additional squad?" "I already checked using an artifact," the man replied quietly. "It's only that brat and his lunatic knight. That's all." His voice grew colder. "How dare they associate with nobility? It's insulting. And those rumors about them being dead, if they're true, we can proceed immediately. We'll enter the underworld without delay." The two nobles exchanged glances, their expressions turning increasingly repulsive as they plotted. They spoke of being free from following the Palladio family's shadow and fantasized about tasting the immense wealth and power circulating within the underworld. One of them let out a low, unsettling chuckle. "Once we control the back routes, shouldn't we give that brat a little gift as well?" "Yes," the other replied with a twisted smile. "He'll be grateful after we teach him how terrifying this world truly is." Neither of them realized that the great moon, whom they dismissed so casually, was far more terrifying than anything they could imagine. As their whispers continued, the ground suddenly trembled. A deep rumble echoed from behind the camp. In the darkness, monsters surged forward in massive numbers, revealing the arrival of an enormous monster army and throwing the entire night into chaos. At that moment, Knights was rooted in place, his gaze locked onto the goblin monsters behind them, their eyes glowing deep crimson as they surged forward in coordinated groups. A panicked noble fled past, and Knights seized the opening, stepping into position to intercept the attack. A mage raised his staff toward the sky, mana erupting as he charged straight at the monsters without hesitation. The goblins before them were abnormally large, their bodies far more powerful than expected. One knight muttered in disbelief that those creatures were truly goblins, while another scoffed arrogantly, dismissing them as weak monsters commonly found in forests. Their confidence wavered as the sheer number of goblins pressed in from all sides. The mage stared upward, unease creeping into his expression, and shouted for Alan to prepare for battle. One goblin stood out among the rest, towering over the others. Alan's eyes narrowed as he saw an injured knight collapse onto the ground. The massive goblin advanced relentlessly toward him. "That thing is charging straight for the knight," Alan said sharply. "Everyone on Outer Watch, be ready." A nearby knight shouted in confusion, demanding to know what was happening. Alan answered without hesitation, his voice tense but controlled. "I've never seen goblins like these. Their appearance is different. Their bodies are different. This isn't normal. It's a mutation, and they're infused with mana. If that's true, their physical strength is on a completely different level." The knights launched a counterattack, but the goblins pushed forward with terrifying force. The leading goblin slammed into the ground, releasing a brutal shockwave that cracked the earth beneath them. Debris scattered as the monster prepared to charge again. Suddenly, the ground trembled violently. The surrounding area shook as Alan completed his enchantment. Massive slabs of rock surged upward from the earth, as though summoned by an unseen force. One knight whispered in disbelief, comparing it to an earthquake. The enormous goblin was caught off guard as the rock formation crashed down, forcing the goblin horde to retreat instinctively. A dull, oppressive glow spread through the battlefield, and silence followed. A knight broke it with a stunned voice. Third-tier magic, rock wall, and a second-tier shield. Another mage stared around in shock. "There's another mage here? Who is it?" Alan did not answer. He calmly began a second enchantment, his mana compressing inward as he spoke a single word. Compression, mana converged, layer by layer. A powerful shockwave rippled outward, and a massive construct resembling a golden cannon took form. All the monsters were forcibly drawn toward the rock formation at its center. This point became the core of Alan's enchantment, the focal center of his overwhelming power. At that moment, every goblin trapped high within the magical barrier froze in place. Alan's gaze swept across them coldly. The surrounding men were completely stunned by the sight. Alan spoke again, his tone calm and refined. "Vacuumlation." A violent rumble followed. The energy within the barrier fluctuated wildly, distorting the air itself. Alan continued without hesitation. Return to the primordial. The gentleness in his voice only made it more terrifying. Mana burst outward as the crystal embedded in his bracelet shone brightly. The goblin monsters sealed within the barrier were engulfed by overwhelming pressure. One by one, despair overtook them as Alan's magic erased their existence entirely. The two despicable nobles stared in disbelief, their faces drained of color as they watched the scene unfold through the night. Alan stepped forward and spoke sharply, his presence commanding. "Don't just stand there. Stop spacing out. Prepare yourselves." His eyes shifted toward the remaining goblins, charging in from the darkness. The clash resumed immediately as monsters and knights collided. Alan also moved, mana surging through his body as he joined the battle. One monster fell after another, and the knights followed through, cutting down everything that remained. By the next day, the goblin army had been completely annihilated. The area was left in ruins, stained with the aftermath of the massacre. One of the nobles exclaimed excitedly that it was finally over. Several knights, exhausted yet smiling, spoke quietly among themselves, saying that the one feared by the world truly lived up to his reputation. Otherwise, none of them would have survived. Alan suddenly grimaced, his expression twisting. "I almost got sent straight to the grave," he muttered. Only then did he realize the strain on his body. The number of spells he had cast far exceeded his usual limit. From the middle of the battle onward, he had been little more than an ordinary person, his already limited mana completely drained. Just then, Yuan hurried over. "Count, are you injured anywhere?" "I'm fine," Alan replied, though his body trembled slightly. "Even with you nearby, losing the ability to protect myself was frightening," Yuan frowned. "Are you truly all right, Master?" Alan did not answer immediately. In his thoughts, he recalled stepping away earlier because the surroundings had been too noisy. Staying close to the nobles had been the safer choice. Yet that was not the real issue troubling him. Why did divine descent occur? He recalled the phenomenon clearly. When forces from the outer world attempted to descend, monsters influenced by it became frenzied, their physical abilities drastically enhanced. He had no concrete conclusion yet, but unease tightened his chest. "How can this be happening?" Alan murmured quietly. "This shouldn't have occurred here." Alan explained the situation in a low, measured voice. Based on his analysis, these were fringe, outer gods' existences that should only appear after the awakening of the five great sins, the occurrence of descent, and the collapse of the law of the world. Their presence implied only one thing. Those beings were preparing to descend upon this land. The conclusion sent a chill through him. Alan's expression darkened as he spoke coldly. "The children haven't even awakened as the five great sins yet. If that's the case, why has this problem appeared at all?" The next day arrived quietly. Alan stood beneath the open sky, his gaze fixed upward. "We need to gather information immediately," he said. His eyes shifted toward Yuan, and a heavy thought crossed his mind. If things continue like this, heads will start rolling soon. Nearby, the two despicable nobles stood frozen, still unable to process what they had witnessed. Alan spoke again, his voice faintly trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of the situation. Later that day, Alan arrived at the ducal house. "We're finally here," he said calmly. "After enduring hardship, even greater trouble awaits." He surveyed the surroundings, analyzing the flow of power within the estate, then added flatly, "The disturbances around the Grand Cathernal are increasing." We finally get a glimpse inside Duke Rochegray's stunning mansion. The interior is nothing short of extravagant, gleaming as if everything were crafted from gold. Even our main character, while taking in the surroundings, can't help but think this place is perfect for a lavish social event, especially since everything really is made of gold. Even the wine glasses sparkle with hints of gold. Evan leans in to examine the wine glasses more closely and can't help but chuckle, realizing that Duke Rochegray is clearly trying to flaunt his wealth. He even jokes that they should swipe a few, since someone this rich probably wouldn't even notice if a couple of wine glasses went missing. As he stands there, he notices nobles all around him chatting and networking. He considers that maybe he should try mingling with the other nobles too. Honestly, he'd prefer to keep his distance, but he figures he might as well put on a show for appearances. Out of nowhere, one of the nobles sneaks up on him from behind. When he turns around, he's instantly annoyed. It's Idiot 1 and Idiot 2, the same ones who were bothering him earlier. Now they're acting all humble and nervous, immediately trying to bribe him. Idiot 1 offers him the finest meat from his territory, while Idiot 2 presents a chest full of gold coins, asking if our protagonist would consider accepting some support from his land. Naturally, our protagonist is completely baffled. He frowns, wondering why these fools have suddenly switched their tune, but to them his frown looks downright terrifying, as if he's ready to tear them apart. They shrink back in fear. Classic resting villain face. The two fools finally admit they should never have messed with our main character in the first place, and we get a flashback that shows what went down after the battle with the goblins. Back then, when these two saw our MC's incredible magical power, they were completely taken aback. They had no idea he was a mage, so watching him effortlessly wipe out such a huge horde of goblins left them in shock. So like any normal person would do in their shoes, they pulled one of the mages from the escort knights aside to ask her about magic. This particular mage was a third circle mage hired by Baron Amon, who wanted to flaunt his wealth. The idiots asked her if she knew anything about the massive spell that looked like a black hole, which our MC used to take out the goblins. They were curious if it was just a second circle spell and nothing special in the magical realm. But the mage quickly burst their bubble when she explained that the magic our boy used was definitely not second circle magic. She added that a spell of that level easily surpassed her own skills, which is saying something since she's a third circle mage. Realizing this, the idiots finally understood just how deep in trouble they were. They figured that the magic our MC wielded had to be above third circle, maybe even fifth circle. That's when it really hit them. They had mocked our protagonist, calling him lucky for becoming a count after his brother's death. But now they saw that our MC was just hiding his true strength. That's why he didn't even bother bringing along escort knights. I mean, they're definitely misreading the situation, but they're not entirely off base. So these two guys who had already felt the sting of the Palladio family's cruelty, thanks to our MC's brothers treating them like their personal gophers back in the day, were absolutely shaking in their boots. To make matters worse, our MC was sporting his signature villain face, which was in full effect. He looked downright terrifying. In a desperate bid to save their skins, they hatched a plan to bribe our MC and win back his favor, which brings us to the present moment. Now even more frightened and realizing their bribes were falling flat, they figured their only shot was to beg for mercy. Both of them immediately bowed their heads, pleading with our MC to forgive their earlier arrogance and the jabs they threw his way. Of course, our protagonist, blissfully unaware, has no clue what these two are up to. He even thinks they're just poking fun at him. Even Evan, who usually has a good sense for these things, is left wondering if they're still mocking our MC. Anyway, our guy decides that if this keeps up, it's just going to lead to more trouble. Evan jokingly suggests he should just take them out altogether, but our MC counters that would only stir up more chaos. Deep down, our MC is completely misreading the situation. He thinks that even though he's generally a merciful guy who doesn't care much about what others say, these two have really crossed a line by making fun of him. Getting serious, he shoots them a death glare. Internally, he knows he doesn't really have the power to do anything drastic, but he figures he might as well give them a little scare. This guy can be pretty petty sometimes. The two fools, catching sight of our MC's death glare, instantly realize they're in deep trouble. A little while later, our MC acknowledges that now that he sent Evan off to the Information Guild, it's time to do some snooping for noble gossip. Grabbing a bite to eat, he scans the area for his first target and quickly spots two nobles engaged in a hushed conversation. This cheeky guy then uses a bit of magic to enhance his hearing so he can eavesdrop. He catches snippets of their chat about Duchess Altea and Count Zenonia, and they seem pretty shocked that these two heavyweights have teamed up. Hearing this, our guy figures he doesn't need to stress, since they're just discussing stuff that doesn't involve him. He thinks to himself that families like the Altea dukedom and the Zenonia clan have never really seen eye to eye, so their alliance probably won't stick. He shrugs it off and goes back to savoring his egg tart, which he insists is absolutely delicious. But then, out of nowhere, he hears the nobles mention something even more jaw-dropping, something that's supposed to be kept under wraps. They claim that the real kingpin of the underworld isn't Duchess Altea Lauria or Count Zenonia, but rather the Count of Palladio. Our guy freezes mid-bite. The nobles double down, calling out his name and insisting he's the true leader of the underworld, completely taken aback. Our MC drops his food and starts to panic, wondering who's spreading such absurd rumors about him. He recalls that he's only met Altea once when she was younger, And as for Zenonia's notorious daughter, just twice. So how on earth did such rumors even start? He tries to reassure himself, telling himself that it's all just gossip and baseless chatter. But while he's lost in his thoughts, someone suddenly calls out to him from behind. Turning around, our boy can't help but wonder why so many people seem to be approaching him today, which makes him feel a bit uneasy. The newcomer introduces himself as Carmine, the third son of Duke Camelon from the Ashidalon Kingdom, a noble from a different land. Our MC, in his usual awkward fashion, gives a slight bow that almost comes off as sarcastic and introduces himself. Inside, he's kicking himself for forgetting that nobles from other kingdoms were also part of this grand social event. In an instant, Carmine flips the script and starts poking fun at our protagonist, claiming he heard that our MC only became a count by sheer luck. He adds with a smirk that he was so envious he just had to see him face to face. Naturally, our guy gets irritated right away, thinking that these days even twisted donuts can talk. A little dig at Carmine's donut-shaped hairstyle. Just then, two nearby nobles jump in to defend our protagonist. They stride right up to Carmine, questioning if he's really mocking a noble from the Asteria Kingdom. Realizing the high status of these nobles, Carmine's face drops as he comprehends the blunder he's made. Panic sets in as he wonders what just happened. He thought Count Palladio was the weakest and most ridiculed noble, so he figured it was safe to take a jab at him. Carmine introduces himself as Carmine Camelon, a self-proclaimed charming and romantic guy hailing from a distant land. His mission in the Asteria Kingdom: to win the heart of Duke Rotegri's youngest daughter and make her his wife. This guy is so full of himself, he genuinely believes that no woman could ever regret saying yes to him. At a fancy gathering, he was meant to unwind with his fiancée and enjoy getting to know her better. But honestly, this guy had no shame. Every time they walked past other women, he would stop to gawk, making comments about their weight and looks right in front of his fiancée. He even had the nerve to insult one woman by saying she had a big nose. Then he'd turn back to his girl and throw out compliments like, "You're beautiful just like your mother." Seriously, did he think that was romantic? Before he knew it, his fiancée dumped him, leaving him utterly shocked and confused about what just happened. He somehow managed to blow his chance with the daughter of Duke Rotgri. He admits he still can't figure out what he did wrong, but the marriage is off the table now. In a fit of frustration while he was venting, he spotted our main character, mistaking him for Count Palladio. He thought he'd found the perfect target to unleash his anger on. Rumor has it that Count Palladio is an immature noble with no connections, making him an easy mark. Fast forward to now, and Carmine realizes just how foolish that decision was. The three high-ranking nobles in front of him tower over him like giants. Meanwhile, our main character, observing the whole scene unfold, thinks this is just plain old bullying. He's not quite grasping the full picture. No matter how clueless Carmine might be about politics, he should at least recognize who these nobles are. Standing before him are some of the most significant figures in the Asteria Kingdom. The host, Duke Rotegri, the leading figure of the royalist faction, Marquis Mardanio, and the key player of the moderate faction, Count Palin. These nobles are the backbone of the Asteria Kingdom, and they have the power to easily put someone like Carmine in his place. Duke Rotegri kicks things off by asking Carmine if he's looking down on them, questioning whether that's why he insulted a noble of the Asteria Kingdom. Feeling the heat, Carmine quickly tries to clarify that he didn't mean it that way at all. But Count Palan jumps in, asking why Carmine would dare to call our main character by his name so casually. By doing so, he's shown a complete lack of respect, and since our main character's a noble, it suggests that Carmine is looking down on all of them. Carmine hastily apologizes, acknowledging that he messed up. However, Marquis Mardanio steps right up to him, pointing out that the real problem is that he disrespected Count Palladio, our main character. Something feels off here. These high-ranking nobles are being way too polite and protective of our main character. Why are they defending him so fiercely? Did someone have a word with them beforehand? Well, we'll find out. As our main character watches the scene unfold, he can't help but wonder just how unlikable Carmine must be for three high-ranking nobles, who hardly know him, to come to his defense like this. He also notes that the whole situation feels strangely familiar, and honestly, he's spot on. It's like a junior officer in the army getting bullied by the higher-ups. For some reason, this brings back some painful memories for our guy. And yes, since Korean men have to serve in the military, Our protagonist is definitely dealing with a bit of PTSD here. Anyway, Carmine takes off, running and crying like a kid, which is honestly pretty amusing. Shifting their focus back to our MC, the three nobles start asking if he's okay. Their faces filled with concern. This completely catches our MC off guard, leaving him to wonder what on earth is happening today and why everyone is suddenly being so nice to him. With his enhanced hearing thanks to some magic, our MC tunes into the conversations buzzing around the hall. It turns out the other nobles witnessed Duke Rodagray, Marquis Mardano, and Count Pallon rushing to defend him, and they've completely misread the situation. They now believe the rumors that our MC is actually the leader of the underworld. They even speculate that if powerhouses like Duchess Utea and the Zenonia Count were to enter politics, Count Palladio, who supposedly outranks both Utea and Zenonia, would have an overwhelming influence. Hearing all this, our protagonist realizes that everyone has totally misunderstood what's going on. He admits it's becoming quite annoying, and he thinks about just setting the record straight and telling them the truth. But before he can say anything, Duke Rodagray and Marquis Mardano start showering him with compliments. They acknowledge that he's a busy man, but they have something they'd like to present to him. Marquis Mardano kicks things off by mentioning that he's heard our boy has been diving into the world of magic lately. He goes on to say that he's recently gotten his hands on a top-notch magical artifact and wants to gift it to our MC. This artifact, he adds, has the ability to store mana. Before our MC can even get a word in, both Duke Rodagray and Count Pallon jump in, eager to share that they too have gifts they'd like to present. Our protagonist, hearing all this, is left utterly speechless. Tempted by the offers, he wisely decides to keep quiet, which turns out to be a clever move. By saying nothing, he ends up with 2 magical artifacts and 5 mana potions, all for free. At dawn in Duke Rodagray's annex, we finally come face to face with the mastermind behind all the chaos and mind games our MC has been caught up in. A stunning woman dressed in black asks Marquis Mardano how everything unfolded, to which he responds that our MC graciously accepted his gift. Typically, light gifts exchanged among nobles are just polite niceties. But when a noble presents another noble with something as precious as a magical artifact, it carries a deeper significance. In this scenario, the gifts from Marquis Mardano, Duke Rodagray, and Count Pallon are essentially a signal that they want to align themselves with our MC's faction. The woman in black finally reveals her identity. She is none other than Duchess Utea. She welcomes Marquis Mardano into our MC's camp and adds that from this point forward, they will serve the esteemed leader, Count Palladio, together. In essence, Utea and Kalia Zenonia are quietly building a noble faction that will operate directly under our MC. Of course, our boy is completely oblivious to all of this, while everyone else assumes he's in the loop. Now let's take a moment to talk about Utea. Honestly, my first reaction upon seeing her was she is stunning.